The invitation that changed everything. How one waitress made her ex beg for a second chance at his own wedding. The cream-colored envelope sat on Elena Ward's kitchen counter like a loaded gun. Inside, gold lettering invited her to watch the man who'd broken her marry into one of the most powerful families on the East Coast. Her hands shook. Her coffee went cold. 8 months of silence, and this was how he said goodbye. An invitation, not an apology. She should have burned it. Instead, she stared at it until a stranger walked into her diner 3 days later and offered her something she thought she'd lost forever. A way to stand tall again. If this story pulls you in, please hit that like button and drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. Now settle in, because Elena's night is just beginning. The diner smelled like burnt coffee and old grease, the way it always did at 6:47 in the morning, and Elena Ward moved through it the way a woman moves through a house she's been forced to live in too long. She knew which floorboard near booth 7 groaned under her heel. She knew the coffee pot on the left burner ran 2 degrees hotter than the one on the right. She knew Mr. Caldwell, the retired train conductor who came in every morning at 6:50, would order 2 eggs over easy, bacon burnt, and complain that the toast was too soft before leaving a $4 tip in quarters. These were the things that anchored her now. Not the future she'd once planned, not the ring she no longer wore, just the rhythm of a small diner in a small town in Rhode Island, where the ocean was close enough to smell on cold mornings but too far to walk to after a 12-hour shift. Elena was 29 years old. She looked younger when she smiled and older when she didn't, and lately she hadn't been smiling much. "Order up, sweetheart." Marlene, the line cook, slid 2 plates across the pass. Marlene was 63, built like a retired boxer, with a gray braid she could sit on and a cigarette habit she hid from the health inspector. She was the closest thing Elena had to family inside these 4 walls. "Thanks, Mar." "You look like you slept in a dumpster." Elena picked up the plates. "I slept fine." "Liar. You got that look, like somebody kicked your cat." "I don't have a cat." "Exactly my point." Elena carried the plates to booth 3, where a trucker was already tapping his fork against the table like the food was overdue. She set them down without comment. He grunted. She walked away. On her way back to the counter, she passed the bulletin board by the register. Flyers for lost dogs. A church bake sale. A handwritten note offering piano lessons. And taped right in the middle, because Marlene had put it there on purpose 2 days ago and refused to take it down, was Elena's mail from Tuesday. Bills. A coupon for a hardware store. And 1 cream-colored envelope with gold-embossed lettering propped up like a trophy. Elena stopped. She didn't want to look at it. She looked at it anyway. "Mr. and Mrs. Richard Calloway request the honor of your presence at the marriage of their daughter, Vivian Claire Calloway, to Daniel Alexander Hayes." She'd read it so many times the words had stopped meaning anything and started meaning everything at once. "You still haven't thrown that thing out," Marlene said, appearing beside her with a fresh pot of coffee. "It's been 3 days." "I'll throw it out." "When?" "When I feel like it." "Honey," Marlene set the pot down. Her voice dropped. "That boy left you 8 months ago. Moved out in the middle of the night like a coward. Took the good TV and didn't leave so much as a note on the fridge. And now he's got the nerve, to mail you an invitation to his wedding, to some Calloway girl, no less. You know who the Calloways are?" Elena didn't answer. She knew. Everyone in New England knew the Calloways. Old money. Older than the highways. The kind of family that owned buildings with their own names on them and hospitals with their faces carved into the stone above the doors. Senator Richard Calloway had been on magazine covers before Elena was born. And Daniel Alexander Hayes, who used to eat cereal out of a mixing bowl because he was too lazy to do dishes, who'd proposed to Elena on a hiking trail in Vermont with a ring he was still making payments on. Daniel was marrying into that. "He sent it on purpose," Marlene said quietly. "You know that, right? Some men, when they walk out, they stay gone. But your boy? He wanted you to see. He wanted you to hurt." Elena's throat tightened. Maybe he was just being polite. "Polite," Marlene snorted. "Men like that don't know what polite means. Polite is not sending an invitation. Polite is letting the girl you abandoned forget you ever existed." The bell over the door jingled. Mr. Caldwell walked in, right on schedule. Elena picked up a menu out of habit even though he hadn't used one in 6 years. "I'll get his order," she said. "Elena." "Mar, please, I'm working." Marlene let her go. The rest of the morning moved the way mornings always did. A slow tide of regulars, a rush around 9 when the shift change at the marina let out, a lull after 10 when the diner belonged to the retirees and the writers who came in with laptops and ordered one coffee and nursed it for 3 hours. Elena refilled cups. She wiped down tables. She smiled when she needed to and let her face go blank when she didn't. But the envelope kept pulling at the corner of her vision. Every time she passed the bulletin board, every time the bell on the door rang, every time the sunlight shifted and caught the gold lettering, she felt it. And underneath the shame, because it was shame, she couldn't pretend otherwise, there was something else. Something harder. Something that had been growing quietly in her chest for months now, crowded out by grief and self-pity and the slow, exhausting work of getting out of bed every morning. Anger. Not the loud kind, not the kind that made a woman break plates. The quiet kind. The kind that just sat there, folded its arms, and waited. Daniel hadn't left her because he'd fallen out of love. That would have hurt, but it would have been honest. Daniel had left her because she wasn't enough anymore. Because he'd met someone whose last name opened doors his never would. Because Elena was the girl from a town of 3,000 people who waitressed at a diner her aunt used to own, and Vivian Calloway was the girl with a trust fund and a Harvard diploma, and a father who made phone calls that changed election results. Daniel had calculated the exchange, and Elena had lost. She hadn't known that at first. At first she'd just thought he was tired, stressed, working too hard on his new job in Boston, the one she'd helped him prepare for, the one she'd moved with him for when she hadn't wanted to leave Rhode Island, the one she'd given up her own promotion for. She'd made excuses for 6 months. Then she'd found the texts on his phone one Sunday morning when he was in the shower. "I told her I'm flying to Chicago next weekend. She doesn't ask questions. Your father liked me, didn't he? Tell me again what he said. She's not really the kind of woman I pictured myself with long-term anyway." Elena had sat on the edge of the bed, holding the phone, and read every message twice. Then she'd put the phone back exactly where she'd found it. She hadn't confronted him. She hadn't cried. She'd gone downstairs and made him pancakes. 3 weeks later, he was gone. Moved out while she was at a night shift. He'd left a note after all, one sentence on the back of a grocery receipt. "I'm sorry, this isn't fair to either of us." She had kept the note. She didn't know why. It was in a drawer in her bedroom, folded into quarters, and sometimes when she couldn't sleep, she took it out and looked at it just to remind herself that she hadn't imagined him. "Elena, honey." She blinked. Marlene was snapping her fingers in front of her face. "You've been polishing that same spoon for 10 minutes. Elena looked down. She had, in fact, been polishing the same spoon for 10 minutes. "Sorry. Take 5. Go out back. Get some air." "I'm fine." "Elena." Marlene's voice had that tone in it, the one she used when she was done asking. "Go. Out. Back." Elena went out back. The alley behind the diner smelled like fryer grease and the dumpster needed emptying again. Elena leaned against the brick wall and pulled the cold air into her lungs and stared up at the gray Rhode Island sky, and for the first time that day she let herself think about what she was actually going to do. The wedding was in 6 days. The invitation included a +1. Elena Ward and guest. That was the part that galled her the most. The word guest, as if Daniel assumed she'd have one. Or worse, as if he was needling her, daring her to show up alone and prove how small her life had gotten. She could not go. That was obviously the smart choice, the grown-up choice, the choice everyone who loved her would tell her to make. But every time she imagined herself on the evening of the wedding, lying on her couch in her pajamas, watching a movie she wasn't paying attention to, knowing that at that exact moment Daniel was saying "I do" to a woman with a better last name. Every time she imagined that, something inside her curled up and died a little. She wasn't sure how many deaths she had left in her. The back door of the diner swung open. Marlene stuck her head out. "Your 10 o'clock is here." "I don't have a 10 o'clock." "Well, somebody's sitting in booth 6, and he's asking for a menu, and he looks like he wandered in from a different zip code." Elena wiped her hands on her apron. "What does that mean?" "It means," Marlene said, already ducking back inside, That he's got on a coat that costs more than my car. Elena pushed through the kitchen, back out to the floor, and her eyes found booth 6 without meaning to. The man sitting there was maybe 35. Dark hair, cut short on the sides, a little longer on top. Clean shaven. He was wearing a charcoal wool overcoat that, yes, looked like it had been tailored specifically for his shoulders, and underneath it, a dark gray sweater that she could tell even from across the room wasn't the kind of sweater you bought at a mall. His hands were folded on the table in front of him. He wasn't on his phone, he wasn't looking at a menu, he was just sitting there, patient, looking out the window at the parking lot like he was waiting for a train. Elena grabbed a menu and a coffee pot and walked over. "Good morning, welcome to Rosie's. Coffee?" He turned his head. His eyes were dark. Not brown, exactly. Something darker, almost black in the diner's bad lighting. He looked at her the way some people looked at a painting in a museum, not staring exactly, considering. "Please," she poured. He didn't take his eyes off her face. It wasn't creepy. It was just attentive, like he was taking inventory. "Menu," she said, setting it down. "I'll have whatever you recommend." "I recommend the pancakes." "Then I'll have those." "Blueberry or plain?" "Whichever one you'd pick," she paused. "Blueberry?" "Blueberry, then." She wrote it down. Her pen felt heavier than usual. "Bacon or sausage?" "Neither, thank you." "Coffee's bottomless. Orange juice is fresh squeezed, but between you and me, it tastes like it came out of a can yesterday." The corner of his mouth moved. Not a smile. The ghost of one. "Water is fine." "Water it is." She turned to go. "Miss Ward." She froze. It took her a second to understand why. She was wearing a name tag. Of course she was. Every waitress at Rosie's wore a name tag, but her name tag said Elena, not Ward, and she had never seen this man before in her life. She turned back around slowly. "I'm sorry. Do I know you?" "No." He gestured, almost apologetically, at a spot just behind her. "Your mail is on the corkboard. The envelope has your full name on it." Elena felt the blood rush into her face. Of course, she'd walked past that corkboard 100 times this morning, and somehow, impossibly, she had forgotten that her private humiliation was stapled to it in full public view. "Oh." She laughed. A short, brittle sound. "Yeah, I've been meaning to take that down. It's an invitation." His voice was quiet. "To a wedding." "Is this a game?" "No, I'm sorry, that was rude of me." "It was a little rude, yeah." He nodded once, accepting it. "You're right." Something about the way he accepted it, no defensiveness, no clever recovery, made her pause instead of walking away. She studied him. The overcoat, the still hands, the face that looked like it could belong to a banker, or a priest, or possibly someone who had killed a man and never lost a night of sleep over it. "Who are you?" she said. "A customer." Customers don't read other people's mail. "I didn't mean to read it. I saw it when I walked in. It's hard not to notice. Gold lettering, formal script. The handwriting on the front is also yours, I think? Or whoever addressed it to you tried to make the address look formal and your name ended up looking almost handwritten. Either way." He lifted his coffee cup. "My apologies." Elena didn't move. There was something wrong with this man. Not dangerous wrong. Not the kind of wrong that sent your hand toward the pepper spray you kept in your apron pocket. Something else. He was too calm, too composed. He sat in a booth at a Rhode Island diner at 10 in the morning on a Thursday and drank coffee like he was exactly where he was supposed to be, and nothing in his face suggested he had ever even once been nervous. "You're not from around here," she said. "No." "Where are you from?" "Originally, a small town in New Jersey you've never heard of. And now, I travel. For work." "Yes." "What kind of work?" He considered her. He tilted his head maybe a quarter of an inch, like a man trying to decide how much to give a stranger. "I solve problems for people who can afford to have them solved." Elena laughed again. This time it was real. "Okay, that's not creepy at all. I can be more specific if you'd like." "No, that's fine. Mystery's good. Let me go put your pancake order in." She walked away. She walked away, and her hands were shaking, and she didn't know why. In the kitchen, Marlene was at the griddle. Elena slid the ticket over the pass. Blueberry pancakes. No meat. Your mystery man, Marlene said without looking up. He's not my anything. He watched you walk all the way across the room. Everybody watches waitresses walk across rooms. That's like half the reason men come to diners. Not the way he was watching you, honey. Elena didn't answer. She filled a glass with ice water and carried it back out. The man was still sitting, perfectly still. His coffee was untouched. He looked up when she set the water down. Thank you. You're welcome. She started to turn. Miss Ward, may I ask you something? She stopped. You can ask. Are you planning to go? To the wedding? Elena stared at him. Nobody, not Marlene, not her mother on the phone, not her college roommate who'd texted 3 times from Denver. Nobody had asked her that directly. They'd all danced around it. What are you going to do? Are you okay? Don't do anything crazy. But nobody had looked her in the face and asked her flat out, Are you going? That's none of your business, she said. You're right, it isn't. So why ask? He took a slow breath. He set his coffee cup down. He looked at her, and for the first time since he'd walked in, his face changed. Something flickered behind his eyes. Something that looked almost like recognition, as if she'd reminded him of someone. Because, he said, I've seen that envelope on the corkboard for the last 19 minutes, and I've watched you walk past it 4 times, and every time you walked past it, you flinched. Not obviously, just a little, in your shoulders. And I've been wondering which would be worse for you, to go or not to go. And I don't know the answer. Elena's ears were ringing. You've been sitting here 19 minutes? 21 now. You've been watching me. I've been watching the room. You happen to be in it. That's not better. No. He almost smiled again. I suppose it isn't. I'm sorry. She should have left. She should have set down the water pitcher and walked into the back and told Marlene to handle booth 6 and stayed in the walk-in freezer until he left. That would have been the sane thing to do. She didn't leave. Are you a cop? She said. No. Are you a reporter? No. Are you here because of Daniel or because of the Callaways? His eyebrows lifted, the tiniest fraction of a movement, but she caught it. Surprise. Genuine. He hadn't expected her to say those names. I don't know who Daniel is, he said. The Callaways I know of. I assume they're the ones putting the wedding on, based on the name at the top of the invitation. But I came in here because I wanted pancakes, Miss Ward. That's the truth. The envelope was a coincidence. That's a hell of a coincidence. The world is full of them. She stared at him. He stared back, steady as a stone. My pancakes, she said finally. What? I have to. Your pancakes will be ready. Of course. She went. Marlene had the plate up. 3 pancakes, a small pitcher of syrup, a pat of butter melting on top, blueberries spilling out from between the layers where Marlene had, as always, been generous with them. Table 6, Marlene said, and then quieter. He bothering you? No. You sure? I'm sure. Because if he is, he's not. He's just, Marlene, he's just a weird customer. I've had weirder. You've had drunker. You've never had weirder. Elena picked up the plate and carried it out. When she set it down in front of the man, he looked at it with what seemed like genuine pleasure, as if pancakes were, in fact, the reason he had come. Thank you. Enjoy. She started to leave. Miss Ward. She closed her eyes. She turned back. Yes? I want to apologize. Properly. I've made you uncomfortable in your own workplace, and that was never my intention. He set his napkin across his lap with careful, precise fingers. I'll eat, I'll pay, I'll leave, and you won't see me again. But before I do, I want to tell you something, and I want you to listen, and then I want you to decide what to do with it. Is that fair? I don't know you. No. But I've done this long enough to recognize certain things in people, and I'm going to tell you what I see, and if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong, and I'll shut up and eat my breakfast. She didn't agree. She didn't disagree. She just stood there holding the coffee pot. You don't want to go to that wedding, he said. But you're going to. I haven't decided. You've decided. You just haven't admitted it to yourself. You're going to go because if you don't go, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering who you would have been if you had. And you're going to go alone because you don't know anyone who could stand next to you in a room full of Callaways and not look small. And you're dreading it because you already know what's going to happen. You're going to walk in, and every person there is going to look at you and think that's the one he left. And you're going to smile through it, and you're going to drink too much, and you're going to drive home crying. Elena's hand was shaking around the coffee pot. She set it down on the table before she spilled it. You don't know anything about me, she whispered. You're right, I don't. Then stop talking. All right. He picked up his fork. He cut a neat triangle out of his pancake. He ate it and chewed and swallowed and dabbed the corner of his mouth with his napkin. Elena didn't move. Why are you doing this? He looked up. Because, he said very simply, I had a sister once, and she got an invitation like that once. And she didn't go, and she didn't stop wondering what would have happened if she had. And she spent the next 11 years letting that man live rent-free in her head. And she died 2 years ago, still not over it. The diner was very quiet. Mr. Caldwell was gone. The marina shift had passed. The only sound was the ventilation fan over the griddle and the faint tick of the wall clock above the counter. I'm sorry, Elena said. Thank you. That's a hell of a reason to say something to a stranger. It is, I know. He set his fork down. So here's what I'm going to say, Miss Ward, and then I'm going to let you get back to your job. If you want to go to that wedding and you don't want to go alone, I can go with you. Elena's mouth opened. No sound came out. I don't mean romantically, he said. I don't mean anything like that. I mean that I will put on a suit and stand next to you and make certain that when you walk into that room, nobody in it looks at you the way you're afraid they'll look at you. That's all. I don't even know your name. Luca Moretti. Luca. Yes. And you just walk around offering to escort random women to their exes' weddings. No, I've never done this before in my life. Then why? I told you why. Your sister. Yes. She stared at him. She searched his face for the lie. She was, she realized, very good at finding lies in men's faces because she had missed Daniels for 2 years, and ever since then she had been watching for the next one. She had become a collector of small tells, the way a man's eyes moved when he was constructing a sentence, the way his shoulders shifted when he was uncomfortable, the way his hands did or didn't stay still. Luca Moretti's hands were perfectly still. His eyes had not moved. His shoulders had not shifted. That didn't necessarily mean he wasn't lying. It might only mean he was the best liar she'd ever met. I need to think about it, she said. Of course. I'm not saying yes. I didn't hear yes. I'm saying I'll think about it. That's all I asked. She took a breath. How do I reach you? He took a pen out of his coat pocket, a heavy silver pen, the kind of pen that cost more than her grocery bill, and wrote a phone number on his napkin. He slid the napkin across the table. 10 digits, no name, no area code she recognized. You can call that number anytime in the next 48 hours, he said. After that, the offer expires. Not to be dramatic, just I have other things scheduled, and I'd need time to rearrange them. What other things? The wedding is Saturday. So? So if you want me there, I need to get a suit, a car, and an understanding of who's going to be in that room. That takes time. That sounds like an operation. It is an operation, Miss Ward. That's exactly what it is. He stood. He left a $100 bill on the table. Keep the change. The pancakes are $11. I know. He buttoned his overcoat. He nodded once, politely, like a man saying goodbye to a hostess at a dinner party. And then he walked out of the diner, and the bell jingled, and through the window Elena watched him cross the parking lot and get into a black car she hadn't noticed before. Not a fancy car, just a car, clean and anonymous. And he drove away. Boss, Marlene came out of the kitchen drying her hands on a towel. Well, she said. What the hell was that? Elena picked up the napkin with the phone number on it. She folded it in half. She put it in her apron pocket. I don't know yet, she said. That night, Elena sat on the edge of her bed in her small apartment above the hardware store on Main Street, and she took out the note Daniel had left her 8 months ago and laid it flat on her quilt. I'm sorry, This isn't fair to either of us. She took out the wedding invitation and laid it next to the note. And then she took the napkin out of her apron pocket and laid it next to both. 3 pieces of paper, 3 different men, 3 different versions of a life she was apparently still supposed to be living. She picked up her phone. She put it down. She picked it up again. Her mother had called twice that evening. She hadn't answered. Her mother would tell her not to go. Her mother had told her repeatedly over the last 8 months that the best revenge on a man like Daniel was to live well, which was the kind of advice that sounded great on a greeting card and meant absolutely nothing to a woman making $18 an hour at a diner in February. Elena didn't want to live well. She wanted, for one night, to live loudly. She wanted Daniel Alexander Hayes to see her walk into that ballroom and feel his stomach drop into his shoes. She wanted him to spend his wedding night not thinking about his new wife. She wanted him to lie awake next to Vivian Calloway in whatever Italian villa they were honeymooning in and remember the exact shape of Elena's mouth when she looked at him and felt nothing. That wasn't noble. Elena knew that. It wasn't the kind of thing you put on a greeting card. But her mother had never found her husband's phone and read the messages. Her mother had never made pancakes for a man who was already gone. Elena looked at the napkin. A stranger. A dangerous, composed, carefully spoken stranger who had walked into her diner on a Thursday morning and known, somehow, exactly what she needed to hear, which should have been a red flag, which was a red flag. But the alternative was the couch and the pajamas and the movie she wouldn't pay attention to. She thought about his sister. She thought about a woman she had never met, who had gotten an invitation like hers and stayed home, and spent 11 years regretting it. Elena picked up her phone. She dialed the number on the napkin. It rang twice. "Miss Ward," Luca Moretti said. "How did you know it was me?" "Because no one else has this number." Elena closed her eyes. "Saturday," she said. "The wedding. It's at the Calloway Estate, Newport, 6 in the evening, black tie." "I know." "You already knew?" "I looked it up after I left the diner, in case you called." Confident. Prepared. She pressed her forehead into her palm. "I have one condition," she said. "Go ahead." "No funny business. I don't know what you do for a living. I don't want to know. I don't want anyone getting hurt. I don't want Daniel dead in a ditch. I don't want his new wife crying at the altar. I don't want some movie thing. I just want to walk in that room on the arm of somebody who looks like he belongs there, and I want Daniel to see me, and I want to walk out. Understood? I mean it. I believe you mean it. And if you do anything, without telling me first, I'm gone. I will walk out of that wedding, and you will never see me again." Agreed. Elena opened her eyes. The ceiling of her bedroom had a water stain in the shape of Rhode Island. She had been staring at it for 8 months. "Okay," she said. "I'm in." "Good. What happens now?" "Now," Luca said. "I come pick you up tomorrow morning at 9. We have 2 days. There's work to do." "What kind of work?" "Miss Ward." His voice was very gentle and very clear and very certain. "If you're going to walk into that ballroom on Saturday night and stop a man's heart, we need to remember how you used to walk before Daniel Hayes taught you not to." Elena didn't answer. She didn't answer because something in her throat had gone tight and her eyes were burning, and she didn't know if she was going to cry or throw up or laugh. 9 o'clock, she managed. 9 o'clock. He hung up. Elena sat on the edge of her bed for a long time. The 3 pieces of paper lay on the quilt in front of her. The note, the invitation, the napkin. She picked up the note first. She read it one more time. "I'm sorry. This isn't fair to either of us." She tore it in half, then in half again, then in half again, until it was nothing but a pile of confetti, and she scooped the pieces into her palm and walked to the kitchen and dropped them in the trash under the coffee grounds. Then she went back to the bedroom and looked at the invitation. She didn't tear that one up. She put it back in the envelope, and she propped it up on her dresser, and she turned out the light, and she lay down in the dark. And for the first time in 8 months, Elena Ward smiled. It was a small smile. It wasn't a nice one, but it was hers. Somewhere out there in the dark, a stranger was writing down her address and calling someone about a tailor. Somewhere else, a man who used to eat cereal out of a mixing bowl was picking out cufflinks for the biggest day of his life, not knowing what was coming for him. And Elena, who had spent 8 months being very, very quiet, closed her eyes and listened to the wind pick up over the roof, and she did not go to sleep for a long, long time. Elena barely slept. She kept waking up at small hours, 2:14, 3:41, 4:07. And each time she woke, she reached for her phone out of habit, and each time she saw nothing there, because the only person she had called the night before was a stranger, and strangers did not text you at 3 in the morning. By 5, she'd given up on sleep altogether. She lay on her back in the gray half-dark of her bedroom and looked at the water stain on the ceiling and tried to remember the last time she had done something, anything, without running it by Daniel first, even after he was gone. She couldn't. Even after the breakup, she had been running her life past his ghost. Would he approve of this? Would he think I was being dramatic? Would he laugh at me? She had been carrying him in her head for 8 months, like a dead phone she refused to throw out. At 5:30, she got up. She made coffee. She stood at the kitchen counter in her bare feet and drank it without sitting down. At 8:45, from the window over her kitchen sink, she saw the black sedan pull up in front of the hardware store. She hadn't even gotten dressed yet. "Oh my God," she said out loud to no one. She grabbed the first jeans she could find, a pair that had a small bleach stain near the knee, and a sweater. And she was still trying to get the sweater straight over her head when she heard the buzzer. She buzzed him in. She opened her apartment door. She stood in the doorway at the top of the narrow stairs and watched Luca Moretti climb them, one hand in his coat pocket, unhurried, like a man who had never been late for anything in his life and did not intend to start today. "Good morning," he said when he reached her. "You're early." "It's 9. "It's 8:52. "Is that early?" "It is when you said 9. "I apologize. I was sitting in the car for 8 minutes trying to decide whether to come up early or sit in the car longer. You can pick which one bothers you more, and I'll do the other one next time." Elena stared at him. She realized after a second that he was making a joke. It wasn't a good joke, but it was a joke, and it had the small, helpful effect of reminding her that whatever this man was, he was at least a person, and people made bad jokes when they were nervous, and he was maybe, possibly, a little nervous himself. "Come in," she said. He stepped inside. He didn't look around exactly. He took it in the way a man with good manners takes in a room he knows is smaller than his. His eyes went to the kitchen counter. Coffee pot, single mug, a stack of unopened mail. And to the couch. A pillow and a blanket bunched at one end, where she had not quite been sleeping last night. And to the bookshelf by the window, which had paperbacks on it and no hardcovers, and a framed photograph of her grandmother that had been taken in 1974. "You live alone," he said. 8 months and counting. "That's recent. Feels like longer." "It always does." He didn't say anything else about the apartment. He didn't compliment it. He didn't pretend not to notice it. He just acknowledged it and moved on. She realized that was a skill, the not commenting, and that she was going to have to learn to do it too if she was going to survive the next 2 days without feeling exposed every 12 seconds. "Coffee?" she offered. "No, thank you." "Water?" "I'm fine, Elena. Can we sit?" They sat at her kitchen table. It was a small round table she had bought at a yard sale for $40 when she and Daniel had first moved in together. It had a wobble in one leg. Luca, folding his long legs under it, noticed the wobble. He shifted his weight so his knee braced it. He did this without mentioning it, which she found somehow more unnerving than if he had simply pointed it out. "All right," he said. "Before we start, last chance. If you've changed your mind since last night, now is the time. Nothing I can't undo in the next 10 minutes. You tell me you've changed your mind, I stand up, I walk out, you never see me again. No hard feelings." "I haven't changed my mind." "Are you sure?" "Luca, I already told you I'm sure." "Good. But before we go anywhere, I need you to understand something. What you're going to do on Saturday night is not a costume party. I don't want you to walk into that ballroom pretending to be somebody else. If you go in there pretending, they will smell it on you in 90 seconds. Women like Margaret Calloway have spent their whole lives learning to smell pretending." "Who's Margaret Calloway?" "Margaret. Senator Calloway's wife, Vivian's mother. She'll be running the room on Saturday. Write the name down." Elena got a pen and a grocery receipt and wrote it down. "So if I'm not pretending," she said, "what am I doing?" "You're remembering." "Remembering what?" He looked at her. He had dark eyes and a pale face, and he had a way of looking at a person that was not uncomfortable exactly, but that also did not let her look away. "Who you were before him," he said. "I don't know who that was. I've only known you for a day, but there was a version of Elena Ward that existed before Daniel Hayes got his hands on her, and that version is not gone. She's just buried, and we have 2 days to dig her up." "That's a big assumption, that she's still there." "She's still there." "How do you know?" "Because you called me." Elena was quiet. A woman who's really gone doesn't call a stranger at 9 o'clock at night and agree to walk into her ex's wedding on his arm. A woman who's really gone stays on the couch. You called me, which means she's in there, which means my job isn't to build her. My job is to stand out of her way. Elena looked down at her coffee. She did not, she realized, have a response to that. "Okay," she said finally. "Okay. What do we do first?" He glanced at his watch. It was a plain watch with a leather strap. Not flashy, not cheap. "Now, you put shoes on. You grab a coat. We drive to Boston. We are going to be there by 11. We have a long day ahead." "Boston." "Yes." "Why Boston?" "Because nothing in Rhode Island is going to fit you properly on 2 days' notice, Elena, and I'm not putting you in a ballroom in a dress off the rack from the mall. Come on." Marco was behind the wheel of the black sedan when they came down the stairs. Luca opened the back door for her. She hesitated, looking at it. She had never in her whole life had a man open a car door for her that wasn't the passenger side of his pickup truck. The gesture was a small one. It shouldn't have mattered. It mattered a little anyway. "Thanks," she said. "You're welcome." She got in. Luca went around. Marco, dark-haired, maybe 50, quiet, nodded at her in the rear view. She nodded back. They pulled out onto Main Street. Carl, at the hardware store, was raising the security gate. He stared at the sedan as it went by. Elena, in the back seat, watched him stare. She thought, that's the beginning of a story he's going to tell the other Main Street guys over coffee. "Marco," she said. "Hi." "Ma'am." "You don't have to call me ma'am." "Okay?" "Elena is fine." "Yes, ma'am." Luca beside her almost smiled. "He will never call you Elena," he said. "It's not personal. He doesn't do first names while he's driving. Don't take it as a slight." "I wasn't going to." "Good." The car moved onto the highway. Rhode Island in February rolled past the windows. Salt marshes, brown and flat. The trees bare, the sky low and tired. Luca reached forward and handed Marco a piece of paper with an address on it. He pulled out a small notebook from his inside coat pocket and a silver pen, the same pen from the diner, and turned to her. "I need some things from you." "What kind of things?" "Your dress size, your shoe size, your measurements, if you know them. Any food allergies. Whether you can walk in heels. How much you've ever spent on a single piece of clothing. Whether you know how to use chopsticks. Whether you get seasick. Whether you wear glasses, contacts, or neither. Whether you have any visible tattoos. Whether you've ever been to Newport before. Whether you've ever been in a building more expensive than the Providence Courthouse. Whether your ex knows your mother's maiden name." That's a lot of questions. "I know. We're going to do it anyway. The more I know now, the fewer surprises we'll have Saturday. Start with the dress size." She told him. She told him the shoe size. She told him she hadn't had her measurements taken since she was a bridesmaid for a cousin at 23, and she didn't remember them. She told him she had no allergies. She told him she could walk in heels, not stilettos, but she could walk in heels, and that her personal record for a single piece of clothing was $142 for a wool coat at an outlet in Westerly, 3 winters ago. Luca wrote all of this down in his neat, spare handwriting, not looking up, not reacting. "Chopsticks?" "Yes." "Seasick?" "No." "Glasses?" "Contacts, but I don't wear them much anymore." "Bring them Saturday. I only have reading glasses. I don't need them for distance." "I want your distance contacts in. I want you to see every face in that room. I want you to not have to squint." "Okay." "Tattoos?" "One, on my hip. Nobody'll see it." "Good." "Newport?" "Once. Field trip in the 9th grade." "Expensive buildings?" "Define expensive." "Have you ever been in a building that made you feel like you weren't supposed to be in the building?" She thought. "A hotel in Boston. Daniel took me there for my birthday 4 years ago. It had a lobby with a piano in it. I remember thinking I was underdressed. Good. Hold on to that feeling. On Saturday, we are going to ignore it. She laughed a little. Your ex. Does he know your mother's maiden name? Yeah, probably. Any childhood stories he'd recognize if you told them to somebody else? A lot of them. We dated for 3 years. Got it. And last question. The one that matters. Okay. He set his pen down. He looked at her. What do you want to happen in that room? At the wedding. Not the big answer. The small one. The real one. Close your eyes if it helps. Picture the moment you walk in. What do you see? Elena closed her eyes. She didn't mean to. She was going to keep them open, because keeping them open felt tougher. But they closed on their own. She saw a ballroom. She saw people in formal clothes. She saw Daniel standing at the front of the room. She saw him turn. She saw him see her. I want him to look at me, she said slowly, and not know what to do. Good. I want his face to not work for a second. That moment before you get your face back. I want that moment. Good. I don't want him to cry. I don't want him to fall apart. I'm not that cruel. I want him to remember that I exist. For 1 second, that's all. Okay. Is that small? It's exactly the right size. Open your eyes. She opened them. Everything we do today and tomorrow is going to be in service of that one moment. If something doesn't serve it, we don't do it. Understood? Understood. The car arrived at a narrow 3-story townhouse in the back bay at 11:04. There was no sign on the door. There was, in fact, no indication that it was a business of any kind, just a black door, a brass knocker, and a small camera above the lintel. Luca pressed a buzzer. A female voice said, "Mr. Moretti?" without asking who it was, and the door clicked open. Inside, the foyer was cream-colored and quiet. A staircase led up. There were no mannequins. There were no racks of clothing. There was on a small table a single vase with a single white orchid in it. A woman came down the staircase. She was perhaps 60. She had silver hair cut to her jaw, and she was wearing a charcoal dress that Elena immediately understood was the sort of dress she did not, in her current life, know how to price. The woman's name was Nadine. She had a faint accent Elena couldn't place, French maybe, or somewhere between. "Luca, darling, you're late." "I'm not late." 4 minutes. Marco took Cambridge Street. Cambridge Street at 11 on a Thursday. You deserved it. Her eyes turned to Elena. "Miss Ward." "Hi." "Hello? Come upstairs. Let me see you." Elena looked at Luca. He nodded. "I'll be in the front room," he said. "Nadine doesn't like me upstairs during fittings. I've been told it disturbs the air." "It does disturb the air," Nadine said, already halfway back up the stairs. "Come, Elena, up, up." Elena followed her up. The second floor was one long room. It had tall windows and good light and 3 small fitting platforms arranged on a pale pink rug. Against one wall was a rolling rack of garment bags, maybe 15 of them. Against another wall was a mirror that had to be 8 feet tall. Nadine waved her onto the center platform. Coat off, shoes off. Elena took off her coat. She stepped out of her boots. She stood on the platform in her bleach-stained jeans and her gray sweater and her bare feet, and Nadine circled her once, not touching her, just looking. Good or bad? Neither. I am thinking. Don't interrupt. Nadine circled her again, then she came in closer. She put her hands gently but without hesitation on Elena's waist, then on her shoulders, then on the tops of her arms. Then she stepped back. "You have a good body." "Oh, thanks." "I don't mean good like a magazine. I mean good like a body that is actually a body. You are not starving yourself. You have a waist. You have hips. Your shoulders are even. This is easier than half the brides I dress, you understand." "I guess so." "Stand up straight." Elena stood up straighter. "Straighter." "I am straight." "You are not straight. You are a woman who has spent the last several months trying to be smaller. It's a posture. Your shoulders are rolled forward, your chin is down, your weight is in your heels. This is the body language of a woman apologizing. We are going to stop doing that." I'm not trying to apologize." "I did not say trying. I said doing." Elena pulled her shoulders back. She lifted her chin. She shifted her weight forward onto the balls of her feet. Nadine watched her do it. Nadine nodded once. Better. Hold that. It feels strange. Yes. That is because you have not stood like this for a year. Your muscles have forgotten. We will remind them. For the next 90 minutes, Nadine made her stand on the platform, and she brought dresses out of the garment bags, and she draped them against Elena's body without making her try them on. She would hold a piece of fabric at the shoulder, smooth it down the torso, step back, look, put it away. Black, deep red, navy, silver. Nadine dismissed them all. Then, from near the end of the rack, she brought out a garment bag and unzipped it halfway and held the dress. Elena saw champagne-colored silk, a clean line, no beading, against her, and Nadine stepped back, and Nadine's whole face changed. "This one," she said. "That fast?" "I do not waste time. Try it on. Over there, behind the screen." Elena went behind the screen. She got out of her jeans and her sweater. She stepped into the dress. Nadine came over and zipped her up. A long zipper along her side, not the back, which Elena had never owned before. She stepped out onto the platform. Nadine looked at her in the mirror. Elena looked at herself in the mirror. Elena did not recognize herself. It wasn't that she looked unrecognizably different. She had the same face, the same hair, the same body she had brought through the door. It was something else. It was that the dress, by being exact, was making her exact. It was not trying to be pretty. It was not trying to be sexy. It was not trying to hide anything. It was just clothing that was the right shape for her body, in the right color for her skin, cut to the right length. And she was standing on the platform with her shoulders back and her chin up, and the woman looking back at her from the mirror did not look like a waitress, and did not look like a rich woman, and did not look like any particular kind of woman. She looked like herself. Herself at a size she had forgotten she was. "Oh," Elena said quietly. "Yes. Yes. Is this? Don't ask what it costs. It's not relevant today. It will go back to the atelier on Sunday. You will wear it for one evening. Today is not about the dress. Today is about what you look like inside the dress." Elena swallowed. Her throat felt tight. Go ahead, say it. "I look like somebody." "Yes, you look like somebody. You were somebody all along. The dress is not doing this. The dress is just getting out of the way." Elena did not cry. She wanted to. She did not. By the time they came out of Nadine's townhouse at 2:15 in the afternoon, Elena had been measured, fitted, shoed, jeweled, and walked. Nadine had made her walk the length of the upstairs room in 3 different pairs of heels. She had corrected Elena's walk twice. "You are bouncing, stop bouncing. A woman in a room like Saturday's does not bounce." And on the 4th walk, she had nodded and said, "There, that," and not said anything else about it. In the sedan, on the way to the next thing, Elena sat with her hands folded in her lap and tried to process. Luca was typing something on his phone. Marco was driving. The city slid past. "Where are we going now?" 2 more stops, hair consultation, then dinner." "Dinner? It's 2:15. You haven't eaten since... What? Since yesterday?" "I had coffee." "That's not eating, Elena." "I know. There's a place in the South End. They'll put us in a quiet corner. We'll eat. We'll talk through Saturday. I'll tell you who's going to be in that room, who you need to worry about, and who you can ignore. And then I'll bring you back here to do the shoes." "The shoes again?" "You'll wear them for 3 hours in the apartment tomorrow. By Saturday night, your feet need to have forgiven you in advance." She laughed. He glanced sideways at her. "What?" "Nothing. Just forgiven you in advance. That's a way to talk about shoes." It's accurate. It's just, you talk like a person who has thought about every piece of this before." "I have." "Have you done this before?" "I told you, I've never done this before in my life." "Then how do you know all this?" He put his phone down. He looked out the window. For a second, he didn't answer, and Elena thought he wasn't going to. "I've watched women walk into rooms like Saturday's for 15 years, he said. "I've watched women who were supposed to own those rooms walk in and lose them in the first 30 seconds because their shoes were wrong, or their jewelry was loud, or they stopped at the threshold. I've watched women nobody expected to own the room walk in and take it because they didn't stop. I've been studying this my whole adult life, Elena, not for a wedding, for other reasons. but the mechanics are the same. What other reasons? A beat. I told you I solve problems for people. Sometimes the problem is that a client needs somebody in a room who doesn't belong in the room. I build them. I'm building you the same way. The only difference is that this time the person I'm building is building herself, and I'm just providing the tools. Elena watched his face. He was not looking at her. His jaw was set in a way she was already beginning to recognize. The way he held himself when he was saying something true and wanted to say something less true and was making himself not. Luca. Yes. Am I the client or the project? He turned. He looked at her directly. You're the client, Elena. That's convenient. That's a convenient answer. It's the true one. If you don't believe it, I'll say it differently. You are the person paying me, not in money, but in trust, which is a currency I happen to value more than money right now. I'm working for you. I'm not working on you. There's a difference. Okay. Are we okay? We're okay. If that ever changes, you tell me. I will. 7. Dinner was in a small Italian place with white tablecloths and 6 tables. The hostess knew Luca. She did not call him by name. She just nodded and walked them to a corner booth and put menus down and disappeared. Elena sat across from him with her coat folded on the seat beside her. Tell me about Saturday, she said. Who's going to be there? 312 guests, give or take. The bulk of them are Callaways and Callaway connections. Senators, judges, half the board of a bank whose name you'd recognize. Then there's Daniel's side. His family is small. His parents, some cousins, and his work friends. People from his new firm. You don't know any of them. None of them? None of them. That's in our favor. Nobody on the groom's side outside his immediate family knows your face. We walk in at 7:30. Most of Daniel's side will wonder who you are. Most of the bride's side won't care. Margaret Callaway will notice within 90 seconds. Why 90 seconds? Because she notices everything within 90 seconds. It's her job at her own daughter's wedding. She's the one running the floor. And Daniel? Daniel will see you within the first 5 minutes. He will not know how to react. He's been telling himself a story about you for 8 months, Elena. In his head, you're still the woman he left. Sad, smaller, stuck. When you walk in looking like a woman he doesn't recognize, the story breaks. He won't have a plan for that. And his new wife, Vivienne, she won't look twice at you. Brides don't. She'll be in her own movie all night. Good. There's going to be one thing, though. What? He picked up his water glass. He set it down again. At some point, probably during the cocktail hour, Daniel is going to come over. He's going to try to speak to you. He'll be nervous. He'll have rehearsed something. He'll either apologize or try to make small talk depending on what kind of man he is when he's scared. He apologizes when he's scared. Then he'll apologize. You need to decide before Saturday what you want to say when he does. I don't know what I want to say. You have 2 days to figure it out. Give it some thought. But Elena, whatever you decide, keep it short. A sentence. Maybe 2. The shorter the better. If you get into a conversation with him, you lose. The only way to win this is to refuse to explain yourself. People who explain themselves sound like they're defending themselves. You have nothing to defend. Elena took a long sip of water. Luca. Yes. Are you enjoying this? Enjoying what? This. All of it. The dress, the car, the planning. You're in your element, I can tell. He actually laughed. It was a short, low sound. Nothing performed about it. I am in my element. I figured. Does that bother you? No. I think I'd rather have somebody doing this who's good at it than somebody who's scared of it. Wise. But go ahead. It does make me wonder what else you're good at, and when I'm going to find out. He held her eyes across the table. He didn't look away. You've got good instincts, Elena. That's not an answer. No, it isn't. The second day went faster than the first. Friday morning, he came to her apartment at 8. They drove into Providence and did not leave Rhode Island. He had rented a conference room in a hotel downtown, and he had, she realized when she walked in, been awake for longer than she had. There were 3 things on the conference room table: a small printed map of the Callaway estate marked with X's and arrows and notes in his handwriting, a photograph of Margaret Callaway, printed from a society magazine, and a list of 20 names. What's the list? People who will be in that room who you might end up speaking to. I'm going to tell you who each of them is, what they do, what you say if they speak to you, and what you don't say. You're not going to remember all of it. That's fine. I just need you to have heard it once, so that if it comes up, you have some context. You researched 20 guests. I researched 90. I narrowed it down to 20. Who does this, Luca? I do. For a date to a wedding? Elena, you keep asking me questions like this like you expect the answers to scare you off. I am telling you that I prepared for this the way I prepare for anything that matters. If that's the part that bothers you, you should know now, and we can stop, and I'll drive you home, and I won't be mad. It doesn't bother me. Are you sure? It should bother me. I think that's different. It should, it doesn't. That's its own problem I'll deal with later. He looked at her for a long moment. All right, he said. They worked through the list. He was patient. He was thorough. Twice he quizzed her on names she'd just learned, and twice she missed one, and neither time did he make her feel stupid. They broke for lunch at 1, sandwiches, nothing fancy, eaten in the conference room, and went back to it. By 4, she knew the names of the 3 people Margaret Calloway was likely to use as messengers if she wanted to send word without crossing the room herself. By 5, she knew which entrance she and Luca would use, which entrance they would pretend to use for the valets, and where Marco would be parked with the car running if they needed to leave fast. Why would we need to leave fast? We won't. But you planned for it. I always plan for it. It doesn't mean it's going to happen. It means if it happens, we don't have to think. Okay. At 6, they were done. Go home, he said. Eat something. Have 1 glass of wine, not 2. Go to bed early. Don't look at your phone. Don't read old texts from Daniel. Don't go through the photos on your laptop. Don't call your mother. Just eat, bathe, sleep. Tomorrow is a long day. You've thought about this too. Yes. What are you going to do tonight? Check in with Marco, confirm the car, confirm the timing with the driver who's taking the dress down to your apartment tomorrow morning. Eat something, call 2 people, sleep. No wine? I don't drink the night before something that matters. Saturday matters that much to you? Saturday matters as much to me as anything I've worked on this year. She didn't know what to say to that. She said, Thank you, Luca. Don't thank me yet. Thank me Saturday night, if you still want to. Bosam. She went home. She did what he said. She ate a bowl of soup standing at the kitchen counter. She took a long shower. She poured a single glass of wine and sipped it while she looked out the window at the dark street. She did not look at her phone. She did not open her laptop. She went to bed at 9:30. She did not sleep right away. She lay on her back and she stared at the water stain on the ceiling, and she tried to picture the ballroom, the dress, the walk across the floor, Daniel's face turning. She tried to picture what she was going to say to him when he came over. She didn't have a sentence yet. She turned on her side. She closed her eyes. She thought about Luca, who had spent 2 days building a plan around a single minute of a stranger's life. She thought about the way he had said, I'm working for you. I'm not working on you. She thought about Marco, who would never call her Elena. She thought about Nadine, who had put her hands on her waist and told her she had a good body and meant it in a way no man had ever meant it. She thought, if this goes badly, I will still have had these 2 days. That is more than I had a week ago. Somewhere around 10, she drifted under. She slept, for the first time in 8 months, the whole way through the night. The Calloway estate sat on a 20-acre cliff in Newport, the kind of property that had its own name on a plaque at the gate. Gray Harbor, it was called, though nobody who'd actually grown up there ever called it that out loud. The house itself had been built in 1897 by a shipping magnate who'd lost 2 sons to the ocean and decided to build something the ocean couldn't reach. It had 42 rooms. It had a ballroom on the first floor with a view of the water that had been photographed for 3 different magazines in the last decade. And on the Saturday evening of Daniel Alexander Hayes's wedding, it had 312 guests on the confirmed list, not counting the staff. Elena Ward was not on the confirmed list, or rather, she was. Officially. Her name had been typed into a spreadsheet weeks ago in the section marked Groom's Side, personal, and nobody had gone back and deleted it because nobody on the Calloway staff expected her to show up, and Daniel hadn't had the nerve to ask them to remove her. So when the black car crested the hill and pulled onto the long cobblestone driveway at 7:23, an hour and 23 minutes after the ceremony had ended, exactly 47 minutes into the cocktail reception, precisely the moment Luca had chosen, the two valets in gray suits looked at the car, looked at each other, and pulled out their tablets to verify. Elena sat in the back seat with her hands folded in her lap. Her knuckles were white. "Breathe," Luca said without looking at her. "I am breathing." "No, you're holding air in your chest. That's not the same thing." She let out a slow breath. She had not known, until this moment, how much work it took to breathe on purpose. Her whole life she had breathed by accident. Now she had to think about it. The car came to a stop. The driver, a man Luca had introduced only as Marco, who had not said more than 12 words all day, did not get out. He stayed behind the wheel, hands at 10 and 2, eyes on the rear view. "The valet will open my door first," Luca said quietly. "I'll walk around to yours. You wait. You don't touch the handle. You don't even look at the handle. When I open your door, you give me your left hand. You step out with your right foot first, and you don't stand up all the way until I'm standing. You understand?" "Yes?" "Say it back to me." "Left hand. Right foot. I don't stand until you stand." "Good." Through the tinted window, Elena could see the entrance to the house. White marble steps. Two enormous arched doors standing open. Warm yellow light spilling out onto the driveway. String quartet music drifting from somewhere inside. Something slow and stately. Vivaldi, maybe. She didn't know. She had never in her life been in a building where a string quartet played. A valet appeared at Luca's window. Luca rolled it down. He handed over a small cream-colored card, the kind of card that had no words on it, just a symbol embossed in silver. The valet looked at the card. The valet's posture changed. She saw it even from where she was sitting, the subtle straightening of his spine, the sudden softness in his face. "Right away, sir." "Thank you." The valet opened Luca's door first. Luca stepped out. He was wearing a midnight blue tuxedo that Elena had watched him put on 2 hours ago in a hotel suite in Providence, and she still couldn't quite believe it was the same man who had sat across from her in the diner 4 days earlier drinking coffee in a wool overcoat. He looked, she didn't have a better word for it, assembled. Like every piece of him had been put there on purpose. He walked around the back of the car. Elena kept her hands in her lap. She counted his footsteps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The door opened. "Miss Ward." He held out his hand. She gave him her left. She stepped out with her right foot first. She did not stand up all the way until he stood. The dress was the color of champagne, with a neckline that was not plunging but was exact, cut in a way that the woman at the boutique in Boston had described 3 days ago as architectural. It fell to her ankles in a single clean line. There was no lace on it, no beading, no shimmer, nothing that sparkled. Luca had been very specific about that. "The women in that room will be wearing everything they own," he had said, on the drive back from Boston. "Every diamond, every sequin, every inch of fabric they could justify. You will be wearing one color and nothing else. You will be the quietest thing in the ballroom, and that is why every eye will come to you." She had not believed him. She believed him now, because as she crossed the driveway on his arm, left hand tucked into the crook of his elbow, right hand holding the small clutch he had given her this morning, she could feel it already. A ripple, a turning, a tilt in the center of gravity of the little knots of guests spilling out onto the stone terrace for their cigarettes and their phone calls. Heads swiveled, conversations paused. A woman in a gold dress let her cigarette hand drop to her side without noticing. Elena had not set foot inside the house yet, and she had already started to change the air around it. "Chin," Luca murmured. She lifted her chin. "Don't look at them." "I'm not." "You are. Look at the door." She looked at the door. They climbed the marble steps. The two arched doors stood open. A man in a black suit with an earpiece stood at the top of them with a tablet in his hand. He looked up as they approached. "Good evening, sir. Name?" "Moretti, plus Ward." The man's eyes flicked down. His eyes flicked back up. If Elena had not been watching his face, and she was, because Luca had told her to watch every face, every reaction, every small tell, because she had a right to know how her name landed in every mouth, she would have missed it. The tiniest pause, the half-second of recognition. "Of course, Mr. Moretti, Miss Ward. Welcome to Gray Harbor." The The cocktail reception is in the blue room, just through the foyer and to your left. Dinner service will begin at 8. Thank you. They stepped inside. And then for a moment, Elena forgot about the dress, and the breathing, and the right foot first, because the foyer of the Calloway house was simply not a room she had the vocabulary for. The ceiling was 3 stories high. There was a staircase that curved up and away from the entrance like something out of a museum, and a chandelier above it the size of her car, and oil paintings on the walls that looked, from her limited knowledge, like they were old enough to have been painted by men who had actually known the people in them. The floor was marble. The air smelled like fresh flowers and old wood and a woman's perfume, and underneath all of it, faintly, like the sea. Keep walking, Luca said under his breath. I know. You stopped. I didn't stop. I slowed. Same thing. In here. Keep walking. She kept walking. They moved through the foyer past a small receiving party of Calloway cousins who Elena did not recognize and who turned to watch them pass without quite meaning to, and through a set of double doors into the blue room. The blue room was not blue. It was pale gray, with blue accents, silk draperies at the windows, blue flowers in crystal vases on every small table, a blue runner down the center of the floor that nobody was walking on. A string quartet played in the far corner. Waiters in white jackets moved through the crowd with silver trays. There were, by Elena's quick and panicked count, at least 250 people in the room, and every one of them was dressed in a way that suggested they had been rehearsing for this evening since childhood. Elena's stomach turned over once, hard. She did not let it show on her face. Luca had spent 2 days teaching her how not to let things show on her face. He had stood her in front of a hotel mirror and made her practice it. The neutral expression, the one that was not quite a smile and not quite a frown, the one that said, I am looking at you, and I am not impressed, and I am not unimpressed, and you cannot read me. She had hated it at first. It had felt like putting on someone else's face. Now, here, under the chandelier in the blue room, it was the only face she had. Left, Luca said, slowly, toward the bar. They moved. She saw Daniel in pieces, a slice of his jaw through a gap in the crowd, the back of his head. He'd cut his hair shorter than he used to wear it, which she noticed because she used to cut it for him with kitchen scissors in the bathroom of their old apartment. The sleeve of his tuxedo. A laugh she didn't recognize. Then the crowd parted for a waiter, and there he was, Daniel Alexander Hayes, 32 years old, groom. He was standing near the fireplace with one hand in his pocket and the other holding a champagne flute, and he was talking to a man in a navy suit who Elena would find out later was a senator from Connecticut. Daniel was smiling. He had the smile Elena remembered, the slightly crooked one, the one that had always seemed boyish to her, that had been one of the first things she'd loved about him. He was listening to the senator's story and laughing at the right moments. He looked good. He looked, she realized with a small internal lurch, genuinely happy. For a second she thought, he's happy. I'm here to ruin a happy man's wedding. And then the senator said something and Daniel laughed again, and his eyes moved the way eyes do at parties, a restless scan of the room without any real purpose. And his eyes found her. His mouth was still open in a laugh. His mouth stayed open for almost a full second after his eyes found her. Then the laugh died. Then the champagne flute in his hand tipped very slightly, and a single drop of champagne fell onto the marble floor between his shoes. Elena saw it. She saw the drop. She saw the way Daniel looked down at the drop, and looked up, and looked at her, and then looked past her, at Luca, and then looked back at her. She saw the exact moment he understood that she had not come alone. She kept walking. Luca's arm was very steady under her hand. Bar, he murmured. Yes. They reached the bar. The bartender, a young man who was working very hard not to stare at her, asked what they'd like. 2 glasses of the Montrachet, please, Luca said. Right away, sir. Elena had no idea what Montrachet was. She had not ordered it. She had not known she wanted it. But when the bartender set it down in front of her in a glass so thin it felt like it might crack in her fingers, she picked it up and she sipped it, and she understood then what all the fuss was about. He saw me, she said very quietly, not moving her lips. I know. He dropped some of his drink. I saw. What do I do now? Nothing. You let him come to you. He won't come to me. He will. It'll take him 8 to 12 minutes. He'll make an excuse to his conversation partner. He'll do one loop of the room because he'll want to look casual. Then he'll come. How do you know? Because he has no choice. You just walked into his wedding with a man he doesn't recognize on your arm, wearing a dress that every woman in this room has already cataloged, and he has spent 8 months assuming you were crying in an apartment above a hardware store. He has to know. He has to know who I am, what I am to you, whether I'm a date or a husband or something else. He will not be able to sit through dinner not knowing. Elena took another sip of the wine. And when he comes, you let me talk first. And then, you decide what you need to say. I can't write that part for you, but whatever it is, Elena, whatever it is, keep it short. The shorter it is, the more it will haunt him. Don't give him a speech. Give him a sentence. One sentence. One sentence. Across the room, Daniel turned away from the senator with an apology Elena could read on his lips from 30 feet away. Excuse me one moment. He set his half-empty champagne flute on a passing waiter's tray. He began to move, not toward them, toward the other end of the room. A loop. Just like Luca had said. Elena breathed out. 8 to 12 minutes, she murmured. 8 to 12 minutes. On. In the meantime, the bride appeared. Vivienne Claire Calloway was 26 years old. She had been photographed over the last 5 years at charity galas, polo matches, debutante balls, a state dinner at the governor's mansion, and once in a shot that had made the New York Society pages, sitting on the hood of her father's 1967 Mustang in a sundress and sunglasses looking like a Kennedy. Elena had looked her up a week ago on the kind of long, sleepless scroll that women do when they're trying to understand the shape of the woman who replaced them. Vivienne was taller than Elena. She was blonder than Elena. Her teeth were, by any measurable standard, better than Elena's teeth. She had a degree from Harvard in something called comparative literature, which Elena had never been entirely sure was a real subject. Now, Vivienne swept into the blue room in a cloud of white tulle and diamonds and laughter, one hand holding up the hem of her gown, the other tucked into the arm of a woman Elena recognized as Vivienne's mother, and the room turned toward her the way a room is supposed to turn toward a bride. Except, not every head turned, not every eye, because a surprising number of eyes in that room, perhaps a fifth of them, perhaps more, were still, even now, sliding sideways toward the bar, toward the woman in champagne-colored silk standing with her hand resting on the arm of a stranger no one could place. Vivienne did not notice. Brides don't notice. Brides move through their own weddings in a kind of golden fog, aware only of the people who speak directly to them. But her mother noticed. Senator Richard Calloway's wife, Margaret, 58 years old, raised in a house only 3 estates down the coast from this one, Margaret noticed. Her eyes, pale blue and very cold, moved across the room, found Elena, lingered, moved to Luca, lingered longer, and came back to Elena. "Oh," Elena said quietly. "Yes," Luca said. "The mother?" "Yes." "She knows who I am." "Probably. Daniel will have mentioned you, not by name, but she'll have asked at some point, and he'll have said there was someone before Vivienne, it didn't work out, and Margaret Calloway is not the kind of woman who lets that go without doing a little reading on her own. She's staring. She's assessing. What do I do? Nothing. Let her assess." Margaret Calloway was, in fact, assessing. She was taking Elena apart piece by piece, the dress, the hair, the jewelry, one simple pendant at the throat, borrowed from a woman in Providence that Luca had introduced only as an acquaintance, the shoes, the posture, the hand on Luca's arm. And then she was assessing Luca. And this was where Elena saw Margaret Calloway's cold blue eyes do something that no one else's in the room had done yet. They narrowed, not in disapproval, in recognition. Margaret leaned in toward Vivienne and said something short and low. Vivienne, still glowing, nodded without really listening. Margaret detached herself from her daughter's arm. She began to walk toward the bar. "Oh, no," Elena whispered. "Oh, yes," Luca said. "I thought Daniel was going to come first. Change of plan. His mother-in-law got there first. Stay with me. Margaret Calloway crossed the blue room the way a small destroyer crosses a harbor. She was not hurrying. She did not need to. The room parted for her without her asking. She stopped 3 feet from Elena and Luca, and she smiled. A thin, correct, entirely unwarm smile. And she said, "I don't believe we've had the pleasure." Elena opened her mouth. Luca spoke first. "Mrs. Calloway, Luca Moretti, and this is Miss Elena Ward. Thank you for having us this evening. It's a beautiful home." "Moretti." Margaret turned the name over in her mouth like a coin she wasn't sure was real. "Are you the Morettis of—" "No, ma'am. No, ma'am. You don't know my family." "I see." She tilted her head. "And you're here this evening as Miss Ward's guest." "I see." Her eyes flicked to Elena. "Miss Ward, you were a friend of Daniel's, I believe." The word friend had been chosen carefully. It was not the word she had meant to use. It was the word that was safe to use in a public room. Elena smiled the neutral smile Luca had taught her. "I was his girlfriend for 3 years, Mrs. Calloway. We lived together for 2 of them. But I understand why you'd want to call it something smaller." Margaret Calloway's mouth did a thing. It was not quite a flinch. It was the ghost of a flinch, caught and killed in the cradle. "I wasn't aware you'd be attending tonight. You sent me an invitation." "Daniel sent you an invitation." "Yes, he did." That was not perhaps the most considerate choice on his part. "No," Elena said. "I didn't think so either." The neutral smile, the champagne glass at her lips, the eyes steady. 2 days. 2 days Luca had spent teaching her this. The quiet blade, he had called it. And Elena had thought the whole time that she was going to fail, that when the moment came she was going to burst into tears or yell or run. And instead, here she was, standing in a marble ballroom with a United States Senator's wife in front of her, and her voice was not shaking, and her hand on Luca's arm was not shaking, and she was doing it. Margaret Calloway's eyes moved back to Luca. "Mr. Moretti, what is it that you do?" "I consult." "On?" "Matters that are private, Mrs. Calloway, but I understand your daughter's husband is going into government work, is he not? Policy, I believe. Congressional staff?" "He's considering several offers, yes." "One of them with Senator Hollister's office?" Margaret Calloway's eyes changed. It was a very subtle change. It was the change that happens in a room when a pilot light goes out. I believe so. Yes." Luca nodded pleasantly, as if they were discussing the weather. "Senator Hollister is a friend of mine." "Is he?" "Was at my table at a dinner in New York 2 weeks ago. He mentioned your son-in-law, actually. He spoke well of him, said he was promising, said he had— what was the word he used? Ambition. He used the word ambition." "How nice." "Yes, I thought so." "Yes, A small silence. Somewhere across the room, the string quartet had moved into a different piece, something with more cello in it, lower and sadder. A waiter went by with a tray of hors d'oeuvres. Nobody on the little island of 3 around Elena reached for one. "Mr. Moretti," Margaret said, very carefully, "I wonder if we might speak for a moment, privately. I'm afraid I'm here with Miss Ward." "Of course. Another time, perhaps. I'll be in Newport through Tuesday." "I see." Margaret Calloway's smile had gone entirely. Her mouth was just a line now. "Miss Ward, Mr. Moretti, please enjoy your evening." She turned. She walked away. Luca did not turn his head to watch her go. Neither did Elena. "Breathe," he murmured. "I'm breathing. I did it. I breathed the whole time." "You did." "She knew you." "She knew of me." "That's not the same thing?" "No, it's worse. I've never met that woman in my life. The fact that she recognized my name means her husband has mentioned it to her at some point over dinner, which means her husband has had reason to mention it to her at some point over dinner, and she has just worked out what that reason probably is." "Which is?" He looked at her. Very slightly, one corner of his mouth moved. "Something we'll discuss another day." Elena took another sip of her wine. "Here comes Daniel," Luca said, and there he was. He came alone, no senator at his shoulder, no groomsmen running interference. Just Daniel Alexander Hayes, her Daniel, the Daniel who had left a note on the back of a grocery receipt, crossing the blue room in a tuxedo that had been tailored better than any suit he had ever owned in his life, and in his face was something Elena had never seen in his face before. Fear, not big fear, not the fear of a man in mortal danger. The small, sick fear of a man who has realized, in the middle of a room of 300 people, that the script he had prepared for tonight is not the script being used. He stopped in front of them. He looked at Elena first. He looked at her for a long time. He looked at her the way a man looks at a photograph he has not seen in a very long time. Elena, Daniel, you came. You invited me. I know, I didn't think that I'd show up. Yeah. Here I am. A beat. He looked at Luca. He did not know what to do with his hands. One of them found his pocket. The other hovered, then ended up at his side. I'm sorry, I don't think we've met. We haven't, Luca said. He extended his right hand. Luca Moretti. Daniel Hayes. They shook. The handshake lasted one beat longer than it should have. Elena watched their hands. Daniel's was trembling, just slightly, at the tips of his fingers. Luca's was not. Congratulations, Luca said. Your wife looks lovely. Thank you. Senator Calloway has a beautiful home. He does. A lot to live up to, I imagine. Yeah, I guess so. Daniel laughed, a small, nervous laugh, the laugh of a man trying to throw a rope to a conversation that had already drifted away from him. His eyes went back to Elena. How are you, Elena? You look incredible. Thank you. No, I mean it. Thank you, Daniel. He blinked. He had not, she realized, expected her to simply accept the compliment and move on. He had expected her to say it back. He had expected her to say, you look good too, or congratulations or something, anything that would return them to familiar footing, where Daniel said nice things and Elena said nicer things back, and they both pretended that was a relationship. She said nothing. The silence sat between them. Daniel's hand came out of his pocket and went back in. He looked, for just a second, at the floor. Elena remembered, she remembered clearly, for the first time in months, the way he had looked at the floor that Sunday morning, when he had come out of the shower and found his phone in exactly the position he had left it, and had looked at her, just once, from across the kitchen to see if she knew. She had not at the time understood why he was looking at her. She had, at the time, been flipping pancakes. She understood now. I wanted to come, she said quietly. I wasn't sure if I would. And then I decided I would. And here I am. I'm glad. Are you? Elena? No, it's a real question. Are you glad? Yes, he said. Yes, I am. I owed you. You don't owe me anything, Daniel. That's the thing. You don't owe me an apology. You don't owe me an explanation. You don't even owe me this conversation. I came tonight because I wanted to see your face. That's all. I wanted to see your face one more time in a room you built without me and make sure I didn't feel anything. He swallowed. And I don't, she said. That was the sentence. That was the single sentence Luca had told her to have ready. She had written it in her head on the drive up from Providence, and she had discarded it, and she had written another, and discarded that too, and she had not known, an hour ago, what she was going to say. And then she had stood there watching him walk across the room, and the sentence had come. And I don't. She had meant it at first as the sentence Luca had asked her for. The blade. The short one. The one that would haunt. But when she said it out loud, standing there in the blue room of Gray Harbor, with the string quartet playing and her hand resting on the arm of a stranger and her heart beating perfectly evenly in her chest, she realized it was also true. She did not feel anything. She looked at Daniel Alexander Hayes, and she saw a man she used to love. And she saw a man who had hurt her. And she saw a man who had hurt more women after her. And she saw a man whose hands were shaking at the tips of his fingers, because somewhere in him, in the small part of him that still remembered what it was like to eat cereal out of a mixing bowl in an apartment above a hardware store, he knew he had lost something tonight that he could not get back. But she did not feel anything. She did not feel the heat she had expected. She did not feel the shaking of the legs. She did not feel the bright, thin, sharp joy of revenge she had prepared for. She felt nothing at all, and nothing at all turned out to be the most powerful thing she had ever felt in her life.
I hope she makes you happy, Daniel, Elena said. I really do. I think you need a lot of things, and I think you figured out a way to get most of them tonight, and that's a kind of talent, I guess. I hope it's enough. Elena, go back to your wife. She's looking for you.
He turned his head. Vivian, across the room, was indeed looking for him. Margaret Calloway was standing next to her daughter, and Margaret's eyes were on Elena and Luca, and her face was completely blank in the way that the faces of powerful women are blank when they are calculating something dangerous. Elena, please, can we talk? Not now, but after. Before you leave.
No, Daniel.
Elena? No. He stood there another moment. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'm sorry, he said. I know. I am. I know you are, Daniel. Go. Your wife is waiting. He looked at Luca. Luca, who had not spoken in several minutes, simply nodded, very slightly, in a way that was not hostile and was not friendly and was simply, somehow, final. Daniel Alexander Hayes walked away. He walked the length of the blue room like a man who had aged 4 years and 4 minutes. Elena watched the back of his head until he reached his bride. Vivian said something. Daniel said something back. Vivian laughed, small and silvery, and took his arm, and the wedding went on. Outside, Luca said. What? I need you outside for 5 minutes. He guided her, not urgently, but firmly, his hand just barely at the small of her back, out of the blue room and across the foyer and through a side door she hadn't noticed before, onto a terrace that overlooked the cliff. The wind off the ocean was sharp and cold. Her dress moved in it. Below them, very far below them, the Atlantic rolled against the rocks in long, slow curls of white. She stood at the balustrade and she breathed. She breathed, and she breathed, and she breathed, and she did not cry, and she did not laugh, and she did not speak. And for a very long time, Luca did not speak either, because he was smart enough to know that this was a silence that did not need company. Finally, without turning, "Is it done?" "It's done," he said. He won't come after me?" "He will try. He'll write you an email in 2 weeks. You don't have to read it. I'd recommend you don't." "And her? The mother?" He was quiet for a moment. "She won't come after you either," he said. "She'll come after me." "Will she find you?" "No." Elena nodded. The wind lifted a strand of her hair. She pushed it back. "Luca." "Yes." "Something happened to me in there, when I said it. When I said I don't." "I know." I don't know how to describe it. You don't have to describe it now, describe it later. Or not at all. It's yours." She turned to look at him. He was standing a few feet away from her, hands in his pockets, the wind pushing the lapel of his tuxedo. He was looking out at the water. He was not looking at her. It was the first time all evening he had not been watching her face. "Why did you do this?" she said. "Really?" He didn't answer for a long time. Then he said, without turning, "I'll tell you in the car." She nodded. The wind came up off the water. Somewhere behind them, in the ballroom, a man was announcing dinner. The string quartet was changing pieces. 312 guests were beginning to move toward their assigned tables, and one of those guests was a groom who would not eat more than 4 bites of his dinner that night, and who would, for reasons he would not fully understand for several more months, be a different man in the morning. Elena Ward stood on the terrace of Gray Harbor in a champagne-colored dress, and the wind came off the ocean, and she closed her eyes, and she did not go back inside. She did not go back inside. She didn't go back inside for dinner, and she didn't go back inside for toasts, and she didn't go back inside for the cutting of the cake, or the first dance, or any of the other small ceremonies that were, at that moment, unfolding inside the blue room of Gray Harbor, in a sequence that had been typed into a schedule 3 weeks earlier by a wedding planner in Boston. Luca had offered, quietly, without pressure, to take her back in. She had shaken her head. He had nodded, walked to the edge of the terrace, and pulled out his phone. And she had heard him murmur something to Marco in the car, And 4 minutes later, the black sedan had come back up the driveway, and the valet had brought her coat, and that was that. She left her ex-boyfriend's wedding without eating a single piece of food. The car pulled out of the Callaway gates at 8:14 in the evening. She had been inside the house for exactly 51 minutes. For the first several miles, neither of them spoke. Marco kept the radio off. The highway south out of Newport was black and slick, and the streetlights made long yellow streaks on the windows. Elena had her hands folded in her lap the same way she'd held them on the way in, only now her knuckles weren't white. She watched her own hands as if they belonged to somebody else. "Are you hungry?" Luca said finally. "I don't know." "You haven't eaten since lunch." "I don't know if I'm hungry." "Marco, there's a diner on the 138, exit 9. Does coffee, does breakfast 24 hours. Let's stop." "Yes, sir." Elena turned her face toward him. "A diner. Too soon?" "I work in a diner." "I remember. But this one has a patty melt I've been thinking about for 6 months, and you need to eat something before the adrenaline wears off. Because if you don't, you're going to be sick in the morning." "You're taking me to eat a patty melt after I left my ex's wedding. If you'd rather go somewhere else, we can." "No." She laughed once, and it surprised her. "No, a diner is perfect." "Good." They drove. Her reflection in the window looked like a stranger. The champagne-colored silk at her shoulders, the pendant at her throat, the way her hair had been pinned up by a woman in a Providence salon earlier that afternoon, in a style that Elena would never, in her normal life, pay anyone to produce for her. The woman in the window did not look like the woman who worked at Rosie's. The woman in the window did not look particularly like anyone Elena Ward had ever been. But her hands in her lap were her hands, and the tired ache starting in the small of her back was her ache, and the hunger now that she was looking at it was her hunger. A dull, ordinary, human hunger, the kind you got after a long day. She had been somebody else for 51 minutes. She was coming back now. "Luca?" "Yes." "You said you'd tell me in the car." He did not pretend to have forgotten. He looked out his own window at the stream of streetlight. "I did say that." "Well, here we are. In the car." He was quiet for a long moment. She saw his reflection in the glass, the slight pull at the corner of his mouth, the way his eyes went, just briefly, unfocused. "There's a real answer and a longer one," he said. "Which do you want?" "Both. The real answer is the one I told you in the diner. I had a sister. She got an invitation like yours. She didn't go. It ate her for the rest of her life. When I saw that envelope on your corkboard, I didn't plan to say anything. I was going to eat my pancakes and leave. And then I watched you walk past it, and I couldn't do it. That's the real answer." "And the longer one?" "The longer one is that I had been in Rhode Island 3 days earlier than I needed to be. I had finished the thing I'd come up to do. I was killing a morning before a flight out of Providence on Friday afternoon. I drove past your diner because the GPS routed me past it. I stopped because the coffee at the hotel was terrible. If any one of those things had gone slightly differently, I wouldn't have walked in, and you'd be home tonight." Elena was quiet. "You're saying it was luck. I'm saying it could have gone another way." "That's not the same as luck." "No," he admitted. "It isn't." The car slowed, took an exit ramp, and rolled into the parking lot of a low, flat-roofed diner with a pink neon sign that read, "Maggie's" in cursive. The O in Maggie had gone out at some point in the last decade and never been fixed. 2 pickup trucks and an old Buick sat under the lot lights. A sticker on the door said, "Open 24 hours," and another one said, "No shoes, no shirt, no service." And a third one, hand-lettered, said, "We do not split checks at this time." Luca looked at her. "You're going to walk into a diner in a couture dress. Is it couture?" "You didn't ask?" "I was too afraid to ask." "It's couture." "Oh, well." She looked down at herself, at $8,000 of champagne-colored silk, at least according to the discreet price tag the saleswoman had cut off without showing her. She looked at the neon sign. She looked back at Luca. "Honestly, I think this is actually more my speed than the wedding was." "I had a feeling you'd say that." He opened his door. Marco, behind the wheel, did not turn around, but Elena saw his eyes in the rear view flick once, approvingly, toward her. She realized for the first time that she liked Marco. She realized she had no idea how old he was, or where he lived, or whether he had children, or what he did when he wasn't driving Luca around. She filed this away as something to think about later. Luca came around the car and opened her door. She stepped out, and this time, without meaning to, she stepped out with her left foot first because she wasn't performing anymore, and it didn't matter, and nobody was watching. They went inside. A bell jingled over the door. A tired-looking woman in her 50s with a name tag that read Barbie looked up from behind the counter, took in the sight of a man in a midnight blue tuxedo and a woman in a champagne evening gown walking into her diner at almost 9 o'clock on a Saturday night, and, to her credit, did not blink. "Sit anywhere you like, hun." They slid into a booth by the window. Red vinyl seats patched with silver duct tape on one corner. A laminated menu stuck to the table with something that was probably jam. Barb brought 2 mugs and a pot of coffee without being asked, which Elena respected. 2 patty melts, Luca said. Fries, whatever pie you've got. Apple, cherry, or lemon meringue? Apple. Good choice. Coming right up? Barb drifted away. Luca poured coffee into both mugs. Elena wrapped her hands around hers. The mug was warm. It was the most ordinary thing that had happened to her all day. She held on to it like a life preserver. "You were going to tell me the long answer." "I started to." "You stopped." "I stopped because we pulled into the parking lot." "We're not in the parking lot anymore." He smiled a little. He looked for the first time that day tired. Not the controlled stillness he wore like a coat, actually tired around the eyes, in the skin at his temples. "My sister's name was Gianna," he said. "She was 6 years older than me. Our father died when I was 11 and she was 17. She raised me, mostly. My mother was alive, but she was not well, not after our father. Gianna is the reason I finished high school. She is the reason I went to college. She put me through college by working 2 jobs and never, in 4 years, bought herself a new pair of shoes. I owe her everything I am. And when she was 30 years old, she was engaged to a man named Anthony DeLuca, who everyone in the neighborhood thought she was going to marry. And 3 months before the wedding, he called it off. He'd met somebody else, a girl from a better family, an Irish girl, if you can believe it, from a part of town Gianna couldn't have walked into without being asked what she was doing there. Elena didn't move. The coffee was very hot. She held the mug. The wedding happened 6 months later. Anthony sent her an invitation, not out of cruelty. I don't think Anthony was cruel. I think he was stupid and guilty, and he thought an invitation was a way to say no hard feelings, the way a man says no hard feelings to a business partner he's just cheated out of a contract. Gianna got the invitation. She cried for 2 days, and then she decided not to go. He took a sip of his coffee. I told her to go. I was 24. I was young. I was angry on her behalf in a way she wasn't allowed to be angry for herself, and I told her, "Gianna, go. Go and look him in the face. Take somebody. Take me. I'll sit at the back. Just go, so he has to see you." She said no. She said she wasn't the kind of woman who did things like that. She said she wanted to be the bigger person. And she spent 11 years being the bigger person. 11 years. She stayed in the neighborhood. She ran into Anthony 3-4 times a year, at weddings, at funerals, at christenings. Every time she had to rebuild her face on the spot. And every time he got to look at her with that thin, polite pity you see on men who think they dodged a bullet. I watched her do it, Elena, for a decade, and I watched her get smaller. Luca, she died 2 years ago. Liver cancer, fast, 4 months from diagnosis. She was 44. And I sat by her bed the night before she died, and she was half out of her mind on the morphine, and she grabbed my hand and she said, "Luca, I should have gone." Elena felt her throat close. She said that? She said that. She said, "I should have gone. I should have looked at him. I should have made him see me." And I sat there, and I held her hand, and I said, I know. And I lied to her, Elena. I told her it didn't matter. I told her she had been the bigger person and that had meant something. And the next morning she was gone, and I went home, and I cried for the first time in probably 15 years, and I told myself that if I ever saw another woman with that same envelope and that same face, I was going to say something. Barb came by with the patty melts. She set them down with a soft, "There you go, hun," and a basket of fries and a bottle of ketchup. and she refilled the coffee without asking. She drifted away again. Elena did not look at the food. So that's why, Luca said. That's why. I didn't tell you the full version at the diner because I didn't want to load a grieving woman up with my grief. You had enough of your own. I told you the version that was true but shorter. Luca, I'm so sorry.
Don't be. It was 2 years ago. I'm fine. You're not fine. I'm fine enough. She reached across the table. She hadn't planned to do it. Her hand moved on its own. She covered his hand with hers, and she squeezed once, and he looked down at their hands on the laminated tabletop of a diner off exit 9 of Route 138, and he did not move, and he did not squeeze back, but he did not pull away either. Thank you, she said. For Gianna, who I never met. Thank you. He nodded, once. She took her hand back. They ate. The patty melts were, in fact, exceptional. The fries were the good kind, thin and crispy and oversalted. Elena ate more than she had expected to eat, and she ate faster than she had expected to eat. And halfway through, she realized she was starving, really starving, in a way she hadn't been for months. Not the picky, can't-be-bothered hunger of grief, but actual hunger, the kind where your body is telling you it wants to keep being a body. She finished her patty melt. She ate half of his fries. When the pie came, she ate a third of the piece before she remembered she was supposed to be sharing it with him. I'm sorry. Eat the pie, Elena. She ate the pie. When she was done, she pushed her plate away and she leaned back against the red vinyl booth, and for the first time since she had opened a cream-colored envelope on a Tuesday morning 11 days earlier, she felt quiet. Not happy. Not whole. But quiet. In a way she had forgotten she was allowed to be. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes. What you said to Margaret Calloway, about Senator Hollister, about Daniel and the policy job. Yes. That wasn't small talk, was it? He looked at her across the table. He was very still. His face had gone back to the face she was learning to read. Not hiding, exactly, but not volunteering. No, he said. It wasn't small talk. What did you do? I made a phone call on Thursday. And? The offer to Daniel from Senator Hollister's office is going to be withdrawn on Monday morning. Quietly. No scandal. Nobody will ever know it was withdrawn. It just won't be offered. Daniel will find out in approximately 9 days when he expects a follow-up call that doesn't come, and then in 14 days when the job gets filled by somebody else, and then in about 3 weeks when he realizes that the other 2 offers he thought he had are also not going to materialize. All of them. Because of you. Because of a phone call I made on Thursday afternoon. Elena stared at him. Luca, I told you at the beginning, I said no funny business. I said I didn't want anyone hurt. I didn't hurt him, Elena. You took his career. I took 3 job offers. He has a law degree from a good school and a father-in-law who's a United States senator. He'll find another job. He's not going to be on the street. He's going to be in a slightly worse law firm than he wanted to be in. And he's going to spend the next 2 years of his life wondering why certain doors didn't open, and he's never going to figure out why. That's all? Why? Because, Elena. Because why? He set his fork down. He laced his fingers on the table. Because, he said, slowly, a man who does what Daniel Hayes did to you should not walk away from it into a life that is better than the one he left behind. He should not be rewarded for leaving. That is a very simple principle, and I happen to believe in it, and I was in a position to enforce it, and I did. That's all. You had no right. I know. You had no right to do that without telling me. I know. I should have told you. That was the line, and I crossed it. I thought about telling you in the hotel yesterday, and I decided not to because I thought you might ask me not to do it, and I didn't want to have to choose between your wishes and what I thought was right. That was my mistake, and I'm sorry. You're apologizing. Yes. You're apologizing because I'm upset. You're not apologizing because you think you were wrong. A long beat. No, he said. I'm apologizing because I broke a promise. I'm not apologizing because I think I was wrong. Elena pushed her plate further away from her. Her hands were shaking a little, not from the adrenaline of the wedding, but from something else, something harder to name. She was angry. She was also, if she was being honest, not as angry as she should have been.
and it was the not as angry as she should have been that was scaring her. "Who are you?" she said. "Really? I told you. You told me you solve problems for people." "Yes? What kind of problems?" "The kind you pay to have gone." "Luca, I'm not going to lie to you, Elena. I'm also not going to answer that question tonight, not because I don't want to. Because it's not the kind of answer that fits in a diner booth, and it's not the kind of answer that you want to sit with at 9:30 on the night of your ex-boyfriend's wedding after 51 minutes of the hardest performance of your life. Ask me again in a week. I'll answer you honestly. I give you my word." "Your word?" "Yes. The word of a man who just admitted he lies to women when he thinks it's for their own good." That landed. He actually winced, the first unguarded expression she had seen from him all night. He looked down at his coffee cup. "Fair," he said. "That's fair." She watched him, and for a long moment she didn't know what she was going to do next. She could stand up and walk out of this diner. She could call a cab. She had in her clutch exactly $46 in her own debit card, and she could make the $46 get her home if she needed to. She could decide right now that Luca Moretti had been a door she'd walk through for a single evening, and that the door closed behind her on the way out. She could do that. She looked at his face. He was still looking at his coffee. He was letting her decide. He was not, she noticed, trying to sell her. He was not making the case for himself. He was sitting there quietly, and he was letting her get to whatever she was going to get to. She thought about Gianna. "I'm not okay with it," she said. "Okay. I want to be clear. I don't feel bad for Daniel. I want to feel bad for Daniel on principle because I'm supposed to, but I don't. And that's its own problem I'm going to have to work out later. But I'm not okay with the way you did it. I'm not okay that you made a decision about my life, about my revenge, about my ex, without telling me. Because that means next time you will do it again. Because I have known men like you, and men like you always do it again. You've known men like me. I've known men who were sure, men who thought their judgment was a gift to the people around them. You are a very particular flavor of that kind of man, Luca, the calmest one I've ever met. But that doesn't make it different. That just makes it easier to miss." He absorbed that. He nodded slowly. "You're right," he said. "I know I'm right. I'm going to do better. Maybe. What do you want me to do?" "I want you to let me decide what happens to Daniel Hayes. Not because I'm going to make a better decision than you. I probably won't. I'll probably be softer on him than he deserves because I loved him once and I don't want to be the kind of person who ruins people. But it has to be my choice. The Hollister job, that's done. I can't unring that bell. And honestly, I don't want you to. But the next thing, and the thing after that, if there are things, I decide, not you. You tell me. You lay it out. I decide." "Understood. I mean it, Luca. I know you mean it. I'm agreeing with you. Yes, you decide." "Okay. Okay." Barb came by with the check. Luca put a $100 bill on the table before Elena could even see what the total was, and told Barb to keep the change. And Barb looked at the 100, and looked at Luca, and looked at Elena in her champagne-colored silk dress, and she said, "You kids have a good night now," in a tone of voice that suggested she had seen many strange things in 20 years of night shifts and had developed a philosophical attitude toward all of them. They walked out into the parking lot. Marco had pulled the car around. The night air was colder than it had been an hour ago, and Elena pulled her coat tighter around her shoulders. "Where to?" Luca asked. "Home." "Providence?" "My apartment, above the hardware store." "Okay." They got in the car. Marco pulled out of the parking lot and back onto the highway. For 20 minutes, nobody spoke. Elena rested her head against the window. The champagne she had drunk at the wedding, the coffee she had drunk at the diner, the adrenaline and the food and the exhaustion, they all settled onto her at once, pressing her down into the leather seat, and she closed her eyes, and she did not sleep, but she was very close to it. "Elena." She opened her eyes. "I'm going back to Boston tomorrow morning. I have a thing on Monday and I want to be there Sunday night." "Okay. I'd like to see you again, if that's something you want." She considered. She considered for a long time while the car rolled down Route 138 and the lights came and went on her face. "I don't know what I want," she said. "Honestly, I don't." "Okay." I'm not saying no. Okay. I'm saying I don't know yet. I need to wake up in my own bed tomorrow, and I need to look at my own ceiling, and I need to figure out what tonight was, for me. And I can't do that in the next 10 minutes. That's reasonable. Can I call you in a week? Like you said. Call me whenever you want. You won't. She hesitated. You won't disappear? You're not going to vanish because I didn't fall into your arms at the end of the night? He looked at her, really looked at her, for a long second. And in the dark of the car, his eyes looked less composed than they had all evening. They looked something she didn't have a word for. Tired, honest, a little bit scared. I'm not going to disappear, Elena. Promise. I promise. Your promises have a mixed record tonight. I know, but I promise. She nodded, and she put her head back against the window, and she closed her eyes again. The car pulled up in front of the hardware store at 11:47 in the evening. The streetlight outside her apartment had been flickering for 2 weeks, and it was still flickering. Somewhere down the block, a dog was barking. The hardware store's security gate was down, which meant the owner, a man named Carl, who had rented her the upstairs apartment for 9 years and who had told her 8 months ago, when he'd noticed Daniel's truck was gone, that the first one out the door is usually the one with worse aim, which was the kind of homespun Carl wisdom she had never been able to translate into English, but had, nonetheless, appreciated. Marco killed the engine. Luca got out, came around, opened her door. She stepped out. Her feet in their borrowed heels hit the sidewalk, and she felt for the first time all night how much her feet hurt. Do you want me to walk you up? Luca said. No. Okay. It's okay. I didn't expect you to. She stood there on the sidewalk. The wind had come all the way down from Newport with them, it seemed. Or maybe it was just the wind of small-town Rhode Island at midnight in February, which was the same wind regardless of where you stood in it. Her breath fogged. Her fingers, in their thin gloves, had gone numb. Luca. Yes. Thank you. You don't have to thank me. I do, though. Not for the Daniel thing. I'm not thanking you for that, but for the rest of it. For the dress. For making me walk in a straight line. For eating a patty melt with me. For telling me about Gianna. I don't know what this was, but I'm thanking you for it. He looked at her. He looked at her the way he had looked at her across the booth at Rosie's, 4 days and what felt like 400 years earlier, when he had asked her if she was planning to go to the wedding. You did it yourself, Elena, he said. I put you in a dress. You did the walking. Maybe. Not maybe. You did. She smiled. It was a small, tired smile. It felt, for the first time in a long time, like it had arrived at her face from somewhere true. Good night. Good night. She turned. She walked to the door next to the hardware store, the narrow door that led up the stairs to her apartment, and she unlocked it. She did not turn around. She did not watch him get back in the car. She heard the sedan pull away behind her, and she went inside, and she climbed the stairs one at a time in the heels, and she unlocked her apartment, and she stepped inside, and she closed the door, and she leaned her forehead against it for a long time without turning on the light. Then she reached up and unpinned her hair. She stepped out of the heels. She walked barefoot across the cold wood floor to the kitchen. She took off the borrowed pendant and set it on the counter. She poured herself a glass of tap water, and she drank the whole thing standing at the sink. She looked at her reflection in the dark window over the sink, a small woman in a couture dress in a kitchen with a chipped counter and a leaking faucet, and she realized she was not crying. She had expected to cry. She had assumed she would cry. Every plan she had made for this evening had ended with her crying. She wasn't crying. She walked to the bedroom. The wedding invitation was still propped on the dresser where she had left it 6 days earlier. She picked it up. She weighed it in her palm. She did not tear it up. She did not throw it out. She opened the top drawer of the dresser, and she put the invitation inside, face down, next to a pile of old receipts and a photo of her grandmother and a cheap lighter she hadn't used since college. She closed the drawer. Then she got out of the dress. It took her almost 20 minutes. The zipper was on the side, and the hooks at the top were small, and her hands were tired, and twice she stopped because she was not certain she wasn't going to cry after all. But she didn't cry. She got the dress off. She hung it up on the back of the closet door very carefully, because Luca had told her that the boutique was going to send someone for it tomorrow afternoon, and she did not want to be the woman who returned a borrowed couture dress in a ball on the floor. She put on an old t-shirt. She put on sweatpants. She climbed into her bed, and her bed smelled like her bed, like the laundry detergent she had used for 9 years. And she lay on her back, and she looked up at the water stain on the ceiling that was shaped like Rhode Island. She looked at the water stain for a long time, and then very quietly she laughed. Not at anything in particular, not a good laugh or a bad one, just a laugh. The laugh of a woman who had walked into a ballroom in Newport in a champagne silk dress and walked out 51 minutes later and was now lying in her own sweatpants under her own water-stained ceiling, fully aware that whatever was going to happen to her next, she was not the same woman who had laid awake under the ceiling 6 nights before. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She rolled over. She picked it up. It was a text from a number with no name attached. Got home. Patty Melt was worth it. Sleep well, Elena. She read it twice. She did not answer. She put the phone face down on the nightstand. She turned off the light. She pulled the blanket up to her chin, and she closed her eyes. And somewhere on a highway between her apartment and Boston, a man in a midnight blue tuxedo was riding in the back seat of a sedan with his eyes closed, letting himself be tired for the first time that day, and neither of them was going to know, for a long time, what the other one was going to become to them. Outside her window, the wind kept on coming, the way wind did in February in that part of Rhode Island, cold off the water, long across the roofs, moving on to somewhere else. Elena Ward fell asleep before midnight for the first time in 8 months. She woke up at 9:17 the next morning, which was later than she had slept in 10 years. The light through the window was the pale gray light of a Rhode Island Sunday in February, the kind of light that didn't commit to anything. For a long minute, she lay there and tried to work out whether the night before had actually happened, or whether she had dreamed it, because the ceiling above her was the same ceiling with the same water stain, and the sweatpants she had on were the sweatpants she'd owned since college. And the body inside the sweatpants was unmistakably the body of Elena Ward, waitress, 29, of a small town in Rhode Island. Then she turned her head and she saw the champagne-colored dress hanging on the back of the closet door. And she remembered. She got out of bed slowly. Her feet were sore in places she hadn't known feet could be sore. She walked into the kitchen and she made coffee, real coffee, from the drip machine she'd had since she was 23. And while it brewed, she went to the front window and looked out at Main Street. Carl was already opening the hardware store. He saw her in the window. He raised a hand in the easy half-wave of a man who had lived next to a woman for 9 years without ever knowing a single real thing about her life, and she waved back. She took her coffee to the couch. She sat down. She picked up her phone. The text from Luca was still there. Got home. Patty Melt was worth it. Sleep well, Elena. She read it again. She did not answer it yet. Instead, she scrolled up through 8 months of messages she had not deleted. The last few from Daniel, the silent thread that had stopped mid-sentence on a Tuesday afternoon in June when he had texted picking up dinner. What do you want? And she had answered, anything is fine, babe, and he had answered K, and then, for the next 24 hours, nothing. And then, on Wednesday morning, the note on the back of the grocery receipt. She read her own, anything is fine, babe, 3 times. She thought about this woman who had typed that. She felt, for the first time in months, a small kind of tenderness toward her. Poor girl. She hadn't known. She put the phone down. She drank her coffee. She watched the light change in the room. And then, because she had to start somewhere, she called her mother. Elena, oh, honey, I was going to call you. Did you? I went, Mom. There was a long silence on the other end. You went. I went. To Daniel's. Yes. Oh, Elena, it was fine. It wasn't fine. Don't tell me it was fine. How can it have been fine? It was fine, Mom. I'm telling you, I'm home. I slept. I'm having coffee. I'm fine. Who did you go with? Elena hesitated. A friend. Elena. A new friend. Elena Marie Ward. Mom, I promise, I will tell you the whole story. I will. Just not today. Today I just wanted you to know that I went and I'm okay, and I don't think I'm going to feel bad about it. Not the way I thought I would. Her mother was quiet. Honey? Yes. I'm proud of you. Mom, no, listen. Listen to me. I wanted to tell you not to go.
I almost called you 20 times last week to tell you not to go. And I didn't because I thought whatever it was you needed to do, you needed to do. But I was scared for you. I was scared you'd walk in there and it would break you. It didn't break me. I can hear that. It did something else. I don't know what it did, but it wasn't that. Okay? I love you, Mom. I love you too, baby. She hung up. She sat for a long time with her coffee. Then she got up and she took a shower, and she washed her hair, and she stood under the hot water with her eyes closed until it started to run cold, which was almost 20 minutes, which was longer than she had spent in a shower since she was a teenager. When she came out, she wrote Luca back. Slept. 8 hours. First time in months. Thank you for last night. She stared at it. She added, I mean it. She sent it. The reply came 10 minutes later while she was drying her hair. Call me Friday. That was all. She smiled a little at the phone. She didn't know why. The boutique sent a woman in a black car at 2 in the afternoon to collect the dress. Elena handed over the garment bag at her door without saying much. The woman was polite, efficient, gone in under 90 seconds. The dress had been in Elena's life for 4 days. It left in under 2 minutes. There was something honest about that. She went to work on Monday morning at 5:45 the way she had gone to work every Monday morning for 3 years. She put on her apron. She tied back her hair. She put on a fresh pot of coffee. Mr. Caldwell came in at 6:50. 2 eggs over easy, bacon burnt, toast too soft. $4 in quarters. He did not ask her about her weekend. He did not ask her anything. He ate his eggs, he read the paper, he left. Marlene came in at 7 with a box of donuts she'd picked up from somewhere, because Marlene believed in donuts on Monday mornings, and she looked at Elena for a long second across the counter. Well? Well what? Don't well what me. Saturday. It happened. And? And I'm fine. Marlene narrowed her eyes. She was 63 years old, and she had read Elena's face every day for 3 years, and Elena watched her read it now, and whatever Marlene saw in it made her set down the donut box and cross her arms. You went. I went. With him. With him. Elena Marie, please don't do the middle name thing. My mom already did the middle name thing. I'm full up on middle name thing for the week. Marlene laughed. It was a surprised laugh, the laugh of a woman who had expected something else. She uncrossed her arms. She pushed the donut box toward Elena. Take one. I already had coffee. Take a donut, Elena. Elena took a donut. It was a maple glaze. She ate it standing up behind the counter at 7:04 on a Monday morning in February, and she thought, I am in my regular apron, in my regular diner, eating a regular donut, and 2 days ago I was in a ballroom in Newport, and neither of those two women feels fake. They're both me. Is this new friend of yours going to come back around? Marlene said, watching her eat. I don't know. Do you want him to? Elena chewed. She swallowed. Yeah, she said. I think I do. Careful, Marlene said. I know. I mean it. Be careful. I know, Mar. Because there's a certain kind of man, Elena. I know what kind of man he is. Marlene looked at her. She looked at her for a long time. Do you? Not all the way, Elena admitted. Not yet, but enough to know I should be careful. And I'm going to be. Marlene nodded, slowly. She picked up the coffee pot. Then I'll shut up about it. Thank you. For now. Mar, I said for now, Elena. I'm 63, not dead. I reserve the right to bring it up again if he turns out to be a crook. Deal. On Friday, she called him. It was almost 6 in the evening. She had just gotten off shift. She was sitting on her couch, in her sweatpants, with a glass of cheap red wine in her hand, and her hair was still damp from the shower. And the cold was against the window, and she dialed the number on the napkin, which she had by then transferred into her phone under the name Moretti. Because putting his first name in her phone had felt, for reasons she didn't want to examine, like too much of a decision, he answered on the second ring. Elena. Ja, 1 second. She heard him say something to somebody. She heard a door close. The background noise went away. All right, go. Is this a bad time? It's fine. Okay. She took a breath. I said I'd call you in a week. You did. I'm calling you in a week. I noticed.
You said you'd answer the question honestly. Who you are, what you do. A pause. I remember. I want to know. I thought you might. I'm not saying I'm going to like the answer. I know you're not. I'm saying I want it straight. Don't soften it. Don't make it pretty. Don't tell me the version you'd tell your dentist. I don't have a dentist. Luca. All right. She heard him breathe out. All right. Here it is. I don't have a clean word for it, Elena. The closest word is fixer. I work for a small number of very wealthy families on the East Coast. Old money, mostly. The kind of families that have problems that can't be solved by lawyers and can't be solved by the police and can't be solved by throwing money at the problem directly. They pay me, through a series of companies with a lot of layers, to make certain problems go away. What kind of problems? Lots of kinds. A son who's been blackmailed by a girl he shouldn't have been sleeping with. A daughter whose ex-boyfriend won't leave her alone. A business partner who's stealing. A journalist who's been sniffing around an old story. A rival who's positioning to take a seat on a board the family wants. That kind of problem. And you... What? You threaten these people? No, I almost never threaten anyone. Threats are clumsy. Threats create records. Then what do? It depends on the problem. Most of it is information. Most of it is conversation. I'm very good at conversation, Elena. I walk into a room, I find out what the other person actually wants, I trade them something they want for something my client wants, and everyone walks away. 95% of my work is that, conversation. And the other 5%? A beat. The other 5%, he said carefully, is me making it clear that a conversation didn't work, and that the next conversation is going to be harder. I have never hurt anyone, Elena. I want to be very clear about that. I have never put a hand on anyone. But I've made some people understand that their lives could become much more difficult very quickly if they didn't reconsider their position. And sometimes that has worked and sometimes it hasn't. And when it hasn't, their lives have, in fact, become much more difficult, quietly, through legal means, through phone calls I make to people who owe me favors. The way I made a phone call for you on Thursday. Elena was quiet. She looked at her wine. The lamp in the corner made a small pool of yellow light on the floor. Is this legal? Most of it. Some of it is in a gray area. None of it is the kind of thing you see in movies. I don't own a gun. I don't know any hitmen. I'm not in an organization. I work for myself. I pick my clients. I turn down the ones I don't want. That's convenient. It's the truth. You turn down clients. Many. I don't work for people who want to hurt women. I don't work on custody cases. I don't work for anyone going up against a whistleblower. There are rules. They're my rules. I wrote them myself. I keep to them. Who decides if they're good rules, Luca? I do. That's the problem, isn't it? Yes, he said simply. That is the problem. It's been the problem my whole adult life. I'm aware of it. I don't have an answer for you. She took a long drink of her wine. She set the glass down on the coffee table. Are you rich? Yes. How rich? Richer than you'd guess and poorer than you'd think. What does that mean? It means I have more money than I will ever spend, and I have less money than the people I work for, and I will never in my life close the gap between those two, because the gap is the size of whole countries. So why do it? A pause. A long one. She heard him set something down. A glass, she thought. Boop. Because I grew up without it, he said. Because my father died when I was 11, and we lost our apartment, and my mother and my sister and I lived for a year in my uncle's basement in New Jersey, and I slept on a cot next to a water heater, and I remember, Elena, I remember the exact smell of that basement. I can still call it up, that mildew and gasoline smell. And I swore to myself that I was never going to be that small again. And I meant it, and I have become, through a series of choices I won't defend to you, a man who will never be that small again. It is the honest answer. I'm not proud of all of it, but it's the answer. She didn't say anything for a while. Luca? Yes. Do you lie to the people you love? That's a hard question. No, it's not. It is actually, because the honest answer is that I haven't loved very many people in my life, and the ones I have loved I have mostly told the truth, and the lies I've told them have been lies about my work, lies to keep them safe, lies I thought were for them, which is the same thing you did to me on Thursday. Yes,
You see the pattern.
I see the pattern, Elena. I am aware of the pattern. I have spent most of the week thinking about the pattern. That's why I agreed to what you said at the diner. That's why, if you're asking me whether I want to be the kind of man who lies less, the answer is yes. I do. I want to be the kind of man who lies less. I haven't figured out how yet, but I want to. She pressed her palm against her forehead. She closed her eyes. Luca, this is a lot. I know. I'm a waitress in a diner. I'm not equipped for this. You're not a waitress in a diner.
I am. Literally. That's my job. That's your job. It is not what you are. Don't do that. Don't do what? Don't do the flattery. Don't try to reframe me. I am a waitress in a diner. That is a fact. That is not an insult. That is my life. And I'm telling you that someone whose life that is not equipped to date, to be involved with, a man who does what you do. I'm not asking you to date me, Elena. She opened her eyes. You're not? No, I'm not asking you to date me. I'm asking whether you want to see me again. That is not the same thing. I know the difference. I'm not going to pretend I don't feel the difference, but I'm not asking you tonight to be my girlfriend. I'm asking you to have dinner with me sometime in the next month, somewhere quiet, and we'll talk. And I'll answer your questions, and you'll answer mine. And at the end of it, we'll know more than we do now. That's all I'm asking. Elena was quiet. That's all you're asking. That's all I'm asking. And if at any point between now and then you decide you don't want to, you call me and you say, Luca, I don't want to, and that's the end of it. No argument, no second phone call. I disappear. You never hear from me again. You'd do that. I would do that. Even though, especially because, yes. She thought about it. She thought about Gianna, who she would never meet. She thought about her mother, who had been braver on the phone than Elena had expected. She thought about Marlene saying be careful and meaning it. She thought about her own face in the dark window over the kitchen sink at midnight, looking back at her, not crying. She thought about Daniel Alexander Hayes, who right now, at 6:27 in the evening on a Friday in February, was sitting somewhere, she didn't know where, she wasn't going to look, with a new wife and an old ring and a week-old marriage, and if Luca had told her the truth, no idea yet that his life was about to become much harder. She thought about what she had felt on the terrace at Gray Harbor, not revenge. The other thing, the quiet thing, the thing that was hers. Dinner, she said. Dinner. Somewhere quiet. Anywhere you like, you pick. It doesn't have to be fancy. I liked the diner on the 138. You did? Genuinely, that was a good patty melt. She laughed. It surprised her, how easy the laugh came. Let me think about where, she said. Give me a week. A week. I'll call you. Call me whenever. Luca. Yes. Thank you for telling me. The real answer. All of it. Thank you for asking for it. She hung up. She sat on the couch for a long time in the yellow light of the lamp. She drank the rest of her wine. She realized she was not going to cry about this either. She thought, maybe becoming a person who cried less. Not because she was colder, because she was finally no longer scared of what she was feeling. Damn, what happened in the months that followed did not happen all at once. It happened in the way real things happen, the way a season turns, the way a body heals, the way a street in a small town slowly changes without any one person noticing until one day you look up and the hardware store is painted a different color. She saw him for dinner 3 weeks later at an Italian place in Providence that she had chosen because she had always wanted to try it and had never had the money. He did not try to pay for the whole meal. He paid for his half, and he let her pay for hers because she had told him on the phone beforehand that she wanted it that way, and he had respected that without making it a thing. They talked for 4 hours. The restaurant tried to close on them at 11. They moved to a cafe down the street. They talked for another 2 hours. She went home at 1:30 in the morning and lay in bed and stared at her ceiling and realized she was, for the first time in almost a year, genuinely curious about what the next day was going to look like. She saw him again 3 weeks after that in Boston. He showed her his apartment. It was smaller than she had expected. 1 bedroom. A kitchen that had been renovated at some point but not recently. A view of the river that was, she would grant, very good. He had a lot of books. Almost no photographs. 1 framed picture on the wall by the kitchen,
A young woman with dark hair and Luca's eyes, standing on a beach, laughing at something outside the frame. Gianna. Elena stood in front of the photograph for a long time. She did not ask. He did not explain. He made her pasta. Badly, overcooking it by 2 minutes, the sauce a little thin. And she teased him about it, and he laughed, really laughed, in a way she had not heard him laugh before. It was a younger sound than his speaking voice. She filed it away. She told Marlene about him in small pieces, over months, over coffee breaks, at the end of late shifts. Marlene listened. Marlene asked good questions. Marlene eventually said, one Tuesday morning in April, while they were rolling silverware at the counter, "I don't like what he does, Elena." "I don't love it either, Mar. But he's honest with you." "Yes. And he doesn't tell you what to do." "No. And he's not trying to scrub himself clean in front of you." "No." Marlene nodded slowly. She kept rolling silverware. "Then I'm going to reserve judgment," she said. "For now. For now. I'm still 63 and not dead, Elena." "I remember, Mar. About Daniel, Elena heard things. Not from Luca. Luca, true to his word, laid them in front of her and let her decide. In late February, he told her that Margaret Calloway had started asking around about him and about Elena, and that the asking around had gone in directions that were probably going to be unpleasant for certain members of Margaret's extended family who had business interests Luca happened to know about. Elena asked Luca to step back. She said, "I don't need any more of that. I don't want Margaret Calloway ruined. I don't want any of them ruined. Leave them alone, Luca." And he did. He did leave them alone. He told her a few weeks later that he'd let the Margaret Calloway business drop, and she believed him, because by then she had learned that when Luca Moretti said he was going to do something, he did it. And when he said he wasn't going to do something, he didn't. Daniel Alexander Hayes did lose the Hollister job. He lost 2 others, the way Luca had predicted. He took a position at a law firm in Boston that he had not particularly wanted to take, and a little over a year later, he was divorced. That part had nothing to do with Luca. That part, Elena learned through the social pages of a newspaper she had never read before, had to do with the fact that Vivian Calloway had gotten bored, and Vivian Calloway had, as her mother perhaps could have foreseen, made a habit of getting unbored in the usual ways. Elena did not feel triumph when she read about the divorce. She didn't feel sadness either. She felt mostly a tired kind of sympathy for Vivian, who had been 26 when she'd stood at the altar, and who was now 28 and starting over. She felt nothing particular about Daniel. Daniel did write the email. Luca had said 2 weeks. It took him 4. It was long. It said many things. It said, in essence, that Daniel had thought about the wedding every day, that he had been unable to stop thinking about Elena's face, that he had made a mistake, that he wondered if they could have coffee, that he only wanted to clear the air. Elena read it once. She deleted it. She did not reply. Daniel wrote again 6 months later. By that point, he was separated from Vivian. By that point, Elena had been seeing Luca for most of a year, and the seeing had stopped being something she was uncertain about and started being something she woke up grateful for on ordinary mornings. And the second email from Daniel arrived in her inbox the way a weather alert arrives on your phone for a storm that's already passed. She deleted it too. She did not tell Luca. She did not need to. It was not a decision that concerned anyone but her. But Isagi Mawa. The other thing that happened slowly over those months was that Elena started to do the things she had stopped doing when she was with Daniel. She had once, in college, been a good painter. Not a great one. A good one. She had painted all through her early 20s in the small sunroom of the apartment she and Daniel had shared at first, and she had sold a few pieces at a craft fair in Providence in her 25th summer, and she had thought back then that she might one day make a go of it. Then Daniel had gotten his first real job, and they had moved to a smaller place, and there had been no sunroom, and the paints had gone into a box in a closet, and Elena had not opened the box in 3 years when Daniel had left. She opened the box in March. She set up an easel in the corner of her apartment by the one window that got the afternoon light. She started painting again. She painted badly at first, like a woman who had forgotten how to hold a brush. Then she painted less badly. Then, by late summer, she was painting well enough that a woman who came into Rosie's for breakfast one Saturday morning and who turned out to run a small gallery in the Hope Street district of Providence, asked her, after seeing a photograph Elena had pulled up on her phone, whether she might be willing to show some pieces in a group exhibition that fall. She showed 4 pieces. She sold 3 of them. The opening night, Luca came down from Boston in a plain black sweater and a pair of jeans that he had, she was pleased to see, owned for longer than 10 minutes, and he stood at the back of the gallery with a plastic cup of cheap white wine, and he did not try to talk to anyone. She walked over to him after an hour. She asked him what he thought. "I think," he said, "that the one of the woman at the window is the best thing I've seen on a wall in a long time. I want to buy it. You can't buy it. I'm keeping it." "Why?" "Because it's me. It's obvious. Not to anyone else in here." "To me, Luca, that's enough." He looked at her. He took a sip of his wine. "Fair enough." She kept the painting. She still has it, in the apartment she would, about a year and a half after that night, move into with him. Not in Boston, because she didn't want Boston, and not in her old apartment above the hardware store, because it was too small for 2 people who both had things they liked to do. They had found a place in Providence. It was big enough for her to paint. It was small enough that it still felt like an apartment, not a statement. She was 28 when they moved in together, almost 30. He did not propose at the apartment. He proposed on a November afternoon, a little over 2 years after the wedding at Gray Harbor. On a short walk they had taken along a stretch of beach that was empty because it was late in the year and the wind was too cold. He did not have a speech. He took the ring out of his coat pocket and he stopped walking and he said, "Elena, I think you should marry me." And she stopped too. And she looked at the ring, and she looked at him, and she said, "I need to think about it. Okay? I'm not saying no. Okay. I'm saying I need to think about it. Take your time." She took 3 days. He did not call her once in those 3 days. He did not text. He let her think. On the 4th day she called him. She said, "Come down here." He came down. She said yes at her kitchen table. They did not set a date for a long time. When they finally got married, a year and a half later, it was at the city clerk's office in Providence on a Tuesday afternoon, with her mother and Marlene and Luca's closest cousin and a man named Marco as the only guests. She wore a pale blue dress that she had bought off a rack for $160. They ate dinner afterward at an Italian place that Luca had, in fact, learned to cook the pasta at better than they did. They were back in their apartment by 10 at night. She thought, lying in bed that night, about Gray Harbor, about 312 guests, about a string quartet, about a woman in a tulle gown sweeping across a ballroom in a cloud of diamonds, about a champagne-colored dress that had cost more than her car, about all the things she had once, briefly, thought weddings were supposed to be. She thought, that wasn't a wedding. That was a performance. This is a wedding. And I know the difference now. Boy. Here's the thing, though, that she would tell you, if you asked her. And people did ask her, sometimes years later, because eventually she would tell the story in pieces to the women who became her friends, and some of those women would tell other women, and the story would become, in a small way, one of those stories women tell each other over kitchen counters at the end of nights. She would tell you that the lesson was not revenge is sweet. It wasn't. Revenge, when it came, had felt like nothing. It had been a relief, not a triumph. The part of her that had wanted to hurt Daniel, and there had been a part, and she was not going to pretend there hadn't been, had been the part that had still loved him. Revenge is the love that has nowhere else to go. And once you understand that, you stop wanting it. She would tell you that the lesson was not a powerful man saved me. It wasn't. Luca had not saved her. Luca had offered her a dress and an arm and 51 minutes, and she had walked into that ballroom on her own feet, and she had said the sentence she said to Daniel on her own breath, and she had walked back out. What Luca had done was see her, at a moment when she had been invisible to herself, and hold up a mirror. The woman she had become after that was a woman she had built herself. Luca had just been the one who reminded her the materials were there. She would tell you that the lesson, if there had to be a lesson, was that the worst part of being left is not the being left. The worst part is the quiet, slow, invisible work of convincing yourself afterward that you deserved it. That's the real damage. That's the thing that takes years to get out from under. And the only way out from under it is to stop waiting for the person who left to come back and tell you they were wrong. They are never going to tell you. They are going to marry someone else. or they are going to stay alone, or they are going to do whatever they are going to do, and none of it is going to be about you because you are not, and never were, the point of their story. You are the point of yours. She would tell you that she had gone to Gray Harbor expecting to reclaim her dignity from Daniel, and that what had actually happened was that she had discovered, on a terrace above the Atlantic, that he had never had her dignity in the first place. You can't take back what nobody ever had. You can only stop pretending they had it. She would tell you, finally, that what had scared her the most about Luca, in those early months, on the night drives, in the diner off exit 9, in the long phone call on the Friday when he had told her what he was not who he was. She had understood who he was fairly quickly. What had scared her was who she was going to be in relation to him. She had not wanted to be rescued. She had not wanted to be a project. She had not wanted to disappear into another man's weather the way she had disappeared for 3 long years into Daniel's. She had watched for it. She had watched Luca for the first sign that he wanted her smaller. She had more than once said things to him designed to see how he took being told no. He had taken it well, not perfectly, not every time, not without the occasional stiff silence, not without once a real fight in a hotel room in Portsmouth that had ended with her sleeping in the bed and him sleeping on a couch. He had taken it well enough. He had taken it like a man who had learned, from losing his sister, that the women in his life were not problems to be solved. And she, for her part, had learned, slowly, in pieces, across the months and then the years, to stop expecting him to fail her. That was maybe the hardest lesson of all. When you have been failed by someone you loved, the failure becomes a room you live in for a long time. Every new person you let near you, you check for the failure. You find it in everything. A late text, a wrong word, a look that reminds you of the old look. You spend years reading new men for the failure of the old one, and you call that being careful. It isn't being careful, it's just being haunted. She stopped being haunted, not all at once, but she stopped. That on a cold evening in late November, about 5 years after the wedding at Gray Harbor, Elena Ward Moretti sat on the back porch of her and Luca's apartment in Providence with a mug of tea in her hands, and she watched the last light go out over the rooftops. She was 34. She had a gallery show coming up in January, her second solo. She had stopped working at Rosie's 2 years earlier. When Marlene had finally retired to move to Florida and the new owner had raised the menu prices, and Elena had realized one morning while wiping down booth 7 that she didn't need the diner anymore, that she had been staying out of loyalty and habit, and that both were fine reasons, but neither was a life. She had cried on her last day. So had Marlene. On the phone, long distance, from a condo in Fort Lauderdale. Mr. Caldwell, who was 81 now, had given her a card that said "Thank you for the eggs, kid," and left a $20 tip instead of the $4 in quarters. Luca was inside on the phone with someone in Washington. She could hear his voice through the glass, low, calm, the voice of a man who was still very good at his work and who was, as he had promised her a long time ago, still trying to be the kind of man who lied less. He had not stopped doing what he did. They had talked about that too. He had offered, once, to stop. She had said no. She had said, "I married you. Not a version of you that doesn't exist. If you want to do less of it, do less of it. But don't do less of it because of me. Do it because of you." He had done less of it, slowly. A few fewer clients each year. A little more time at home. He had bought a small cabin on a lake in New Hampshire where they went on weekends. And at the cabin he was a different man. Softer, less watchful, capable of sitting on a dock for an hour without looking at his phone. She knew too, Lucas, and she had come to understand eventually that this was maybe what a marriage was. Not one person knowing the whole of another person. Two people holding two different versions of each other and trusting that the versions added up to something true. The sun was almost all the way down. The sky was that deep winter blue that only lasted about 10 minutes. The blue that made you understand why some painters had spent their whole lives trying to get it right. Inside, Luca hung up the phone. He came out onto the porch. He was holding a second mug of tea. He sat down next to her. He handed her the mug and took hers from her. It was a thing they had started doing at some point without discussing. She didn't remember when. "Cold out here," he said. "It's nice." "It's cold." "It's both." He put his arm along the back of her chair. She leaned her head against his shoulder.
They watched the last of the light go. "What are you thinking about?" he said. "The invitation," she said. Which invitation?" "The one. The original one." He was quiet a moment. "What about it?" "I was thinking about how scared I was to open it. That morning in the kitchen, I remember my hands shaking. I was thinking about how, if it hadn't come, I would still be at Rosie's. I'd still be in that apartment above the hardware store. I'd be 34 and I'd be wiping down booth 7, and I'd be telling myself I was fine." "You were fine before it came." "I wasn't, Luca. I was alive. I wasn't fine. There's a difference." He nodded against the top of her head. "So what are you saying?" "I don't know. I'm saying the thing you think is going to kill you is sometimes the thing that saves you. I'm saying the worst piece of mail I ever got was maybe the best thing that ever happened to me, and I don't know what to do with that, because it means I can't trust my own fear. It means the things I'm most scared of might be the things I actually need to walk toward." "That sounds like a hard lesson." "It is a hard lesson. Did you need me to agree it's a hard lesson?" "I needed you to not argue with me about it." "I wasn't going to argue. I know. I was preempting." He laughed. He pulled her closer. The sky was fully dark now. The first star was out over the roof of the building across the street, though in Providence, in November, on a night when the city was this bright, it was probably just the airport. "Elena." "Yeah." "Thank you for opening it." She didn't answer. She didn't need to. She drank her tea in the cold, on the back porch of a life she had never in her wildest imagining thought she would be living, next to a man she had met in a diner because the coffee at his hotel had been bad. And she thought about the woman she had been in the kitchen that morning, 8 years ago now, with the cream envelope shaking in her hand. She thought about all the ways that morning could have ended. She thought about all the ways the terrace at Gray Harbor could have ended. And she thought, not for the first time, the life you think is ruined is sometimes just the old life. Making room. The tea went cold in her hands. She didn't notice. After a while, Luca took the mug out of her fingers and set it on the porch railing, and he stood up and held out his hand, and she took it, and they went inside together, and they closed the door behind them, and the porch light clicked off, and the apartment was quiet, and it was a Tuesday night in Providence in November, and that was the end of it. That was the whole story.